Hey everyone, how's it going? Today, at long last, we're going to be covering everything you need to know about how to learn and master Camille. And I know a lot of you have been asking me for quite some time now to make a guide about her, and because she's my favorite champion, I really wanted to put a lot of extra time into it and truly make this guide special. But now that it's done, I don't want to keep you waiting any longer, so let's get started. First up, we're going to be covering the runes, and we'll start with Camille's most standard rune page of all, and that is the Grasp of the Undying page. This rune page is exceptionally good at taking really short trades in lane. You want to be trading around your passive and your grasp procs to stay high HP whilst getting your opponent lower and lower. Now, as for the runes you'll be taking in this page, you're going to be taking either Demolish or Shield Bash, depending on your matchup. Now, Shield Bash is really good in matchups where you're going to be fighting them a lot and you really need to contest that side lane prior. So if you're up against champions like Gwen or champs like Fiora, we are definitely going to be fighting them in the side lane, champs like Yorick as well. Having as much combat power as possible by taking Shield Bash is going to help you to achieve that. Now, Demolish is really good versus free matchups, so if you're up against champions that's quite easy to beat in lane, so champs like Garen, or just tanks in general, champions that are really good at team fighting. So champions like Ornn or Malphite, you want to take Demolish so that you can threaten early tower plates in lane, but you also want it to have as much side lane threat as possible in the mid game. Because champs like Malphite, champs like Ornn, they want to be grouping up and engaging on your team, but if you have a lot of threat on side towers with Triforce and with Demolish, you can pull them back to side and stop them from achieving what they want to do. But if you're in a matchup where you feel like it's going to be quite hard, you're not going to be able to hit towers much, or you need to be beating them inside as much combat power as possible, then Shield Bash is a safe default. Now, as for your secondary rune, it's either going to be Second Wind or Bone Plating. Bone Plating is great in matchups where they can't pop it without all-inning you. So champions like Jax, they basically have to Q onto your head to pop Bone Plating. Champs like Riven, it can be quite good as well. Riven, not as good as Jax because she can pop it with Q3 and dash away, but you are going to want Bone Plating, so that when you force trades onto her in lane, later on to the lane, when you're trying to E onto her, you have that Bone Plating to block her re-engage. Now, as for your third rune, it's going to be Overgrowth every single game. Overgrowth is really good on Camille, and you really start to feel the effect of having Overgrowth, the scaling HP rune, and also the Grasp of the Undying, giving you max HP at later points of the game, because your first two items most of the time, Triforce and Ravenous Hydra, quite a squishy build, but if you have this Grasp page and a lot of scaling HP, you're not going to feel quite as squishy in the later points of the game. And as for your secondary runes, you're going to be taking the Inspiration Tree every single game. Now, as for the runes you take in this tree, it's going to depend on your matchup, but also your summoner spells. And we will cover summoner spells in the next section, but if you're running Flash and TP, you definitely want to be taking Cosmic Insight. The reduced Flash cooldown and also TP cooldown is going to feel very significant, but if you run TP and Ignite together, then the Cosmic Insight is not really worth it. Now, if you do run that setup, the runes you're going to be taking is either going to be Free Boots or Triple Tonic. Now, Triple Tonic is great in lanes where you're going to be looking to all in them around that time where you get the second potion with the Adaptive Force. It does feel quite good. So if you're in a matchup where you're up against a Gwen, for example, where you're probably going to be looking to fight him and all in him with Ignite and Triple Tonic, then that's going to feel quite good for you. But if you're in a free lane, maybe you're up against Dr. Mundo or something like that, then feel free just to take Free Boots and take that extra scaling. Now, as for the second rune, you are going to be taking cookies almost every single game, because without cookies, you do run into a bit of mana trouble, especially with She not giving mana like it did back in the day, so you do want to be taking cookies to bridge that mana gap. Now, if you feel like you're playing a lot of games and you're just staying on 3 cookies, you don't really need it, you're just too good, don't need those cookies, then you can take Futures Market. And there was a point where I took Futures Market every single game on Camille. It did feel really OP for the last couple years, but now that they've nerfed it to try to nerf jungle, it's not really worth taking it over cookies anymore, so it's best just to run Cookies Boots, Cookies Triple Tonic, or Cookies Cosmic, depending on your matchup. And as for your rune shards, you're going to be taking double Adaptive Force and scaling HP every single game. Having double adaptive is going to be really helpful with taking short trades around your grasp and your passive, and scaling HP is just better in general on Camille because there's not many situations where you fight somebody to the death and live on 20-30 HP, levels 1 to 3 on this champion. Most of the time you're going to be scaling, getting into those later points of the game, trying to get your Triforce and then playing as aggressive as possible, but in the early parts of the lane you really just want to survive, and having that extra scaling is going to be a lot better than an extra 50 or so HP level 1. Now, as for her second rune page, you're going to be running Conqueror, and this is best in situations where you want to be taking extended all-in trades, or just in situations where short trades are not really a viable option. A couple examples: if you're up against a Yone, and you try to take a short trade and proc your grasp against him, he has way too much sticking power to allow you to do so. He can chase you down the lane with his E, with Q3, with ulti, with lethal tempo, and it's going to be really hard for you to get away from that unscathed. But if you have Conqueror, you have a lot more all-in threat. If he goes for a really long trade, you'll get your Conqueror stack to full, and you'll be able to do meaningful damage back to him. Now, another example is up against Irelia, where if you try to take short trades and poke her down, once she has her Vamp Scepter, her full build, she's just going to heal to full HP off the wave, so the short trade poking style is not really going to work. It's best to have as much damage as possible with Conqueror and Ignite. And if you're unsure what to take in each matchup, there are a lot of different situations, a lot of variables. I am going to go through each matchup one at a time in the matchup section of the guide and tell you what I would take in that situation. Now, as for the runes and the Conqueror tree, you're going to be taking Presence of Mind every single game because it's really hard to take cookies with this tree, with this page, so you want to take Presence of Mind so that you don't have much mana issues. Now, as for the secondary rune, you're going to be taking Legend, Alacrity, or Tenacity depending on the team comps you're up against. If you're up against champions with a lot of crowd control, champs like Sejuani, champs like Amumu, champs like Leona, you definitely want to take Tenacity. But if not, if they don't have that much CC that's affected by Tenacity, then you can just take Legend, Alacrity and abuse the extra attack speed. Now, as for the final rune in this tree, you're going to be taking Last Stand almost every single game. There are some situations where you could take Cut Down if you're up against a really tanky team comp or a Kled. Cut Down is really good up against Kled, but most of the time you are going to default to Last Stand. And as for your secondary runes, you are going to be running the Resolve tree, and the reasoning behind each rune is going to be the same as before: Demolish or Shield Bash depending on your matchup, and also Second Wind or Bone Plating depending on your matchup. But I will say with this Conqueror page, I do advise you to lean towards taking Shield Bash and Bone Plating together, as you really want to be taking all-ins, and if you can time your Bone Plating around an all-in, that's going to be even better. However, if you're in a matchup where it's too easy for them to pop it, maybe you're up against a Jayce for example, then of course you can just run Second Wind, but there's just so many situations where you can run Bone Plating and Shield Bash, and even if they could technically pop your Bone Plating, if you let them, you can look to force a trade on that timer. Now, as for your rune shards, you're going to be taking the attack speed shard, as you're going to be taking extended all-ins now. Not shorter trade, so attack speed is a bit better than the previous page, and adaptive force, and then scaling HP. I advise against flat HP. You can take it if you want, if you feel it. I know some people feel like they want their flat HP, personal preference, but I feel like in most situations the scaling HP is going to outvalue it, so I do recommend leaning towards that. Now, something else I'll say is that if you're still learning Camille, and you feel uncomfortable swapping between an attack speed rune and a flat AD rune, switching between the pages, you can just pick one or the other, whatever feels better for you. This is just what I think is most optimal: the attack speed rune with Conqueror and the flat AD rune with Grasp. Now, as for Camille's third rune page, you're going to be taking the Fleet for Work page. And this rune page is best in matchups where you're up against a ranged champion that's going to be poking you down significantly. So for example, if you're up against a champion like Kennen or a champion like Jayce, then having Fleet for Work with Darn Shield and Second Wind is going to help you sustain through that matchup. Now, not only is it good for the sustain and the health regen, it's also really good at a particular type of trade you want to be doing in these ranged matchups. So for example, if you can Q a minion with Fleet Footwork, the Q movement speed and the Fleet movement speed is going to allow for you to easily hit your W and also your Q too. They're really good in these matchups, not just for the sustain, but also for the trading, but you don't always have to take it. If you're in a matchup, or in an elo bracket, where you feel like Emerald and below, where the players you're up against aren't that good at the ranged champions, or you feel like you don't struggle that hard in those matchups, then you can just run Conquer or Grasp, depending on the matchup, and you can easily win that matchup if you feel confident. But if you're up against a good player, or you feel like you struggle in those matchups, then Fleet for Work is going to be your best friend at getting you to Triforce unscathed. Now, you don't always have to take it against a ranged champion. There are some examples where you can verse a weak ranged champion like Smolder, where he's mainly there to scale. He's trying to stack on you for free and just try to get to 225 unscathed, but on that matchup you can run Conqueror instead to give you a lot more all-in threat, as his harass is not that significant to the point where you'd need Fleet compared to a matchup like Teemo. Now, as for the other runes in this tree, you're going to be taking Alacrity if you don't need Tenacity, and Tenacity if you do, and then just Last Stand every single game, as the value is going to outweigh the other two. Now, as for your secondary runes, you're going to be taking the Resolve tree so that you can have Second Wind, and then either Shield Bash or Overgrowth depending on your matchup. Or if you're in a matchup where you're up against a Quinn, for example, it's going to be really hard for you to proc Shield Bash on this champion. It's just going to kick you in the head and disengage every time you tried to, so in that matchup you mainly play for sustain, and then you can take Overgrowth for extra bit of free scaling. Now, your runes are going to be double adaptive, and then also you're going to be taking scaling HP, because of course you're probably not going to be fighting these champions to the death level 1 or 2, unless they really misplay and allow you to do so, and if they do, then the extra 50 HP is not really going to help. And Camille's final rune page is the First Strike page. However, personally, I preferred this rune page a lot in previous seasons, where there weren't grubs in the game, because now it feels like your early laning and being as strong as possible on that timer is a lot more important than it was in previous seasons, and also with Divine Sundra, it did just feel a bit better. However, there is still a place for it. You can run First Strike in really free matchups, so champions like Ornn, for example, champions like Maokai, you can run First Strike and try to just farm it off them and get as much gold as possible, and play more so for scaling. Play their weak side style, try to get as much gold as possible, rush your item. You can even run it up against the neutralizers, champions like Warwick, but I would still recommend, if you're still learning the champion, to go Grasp or Conquer until you're a lot more comfortable in those situations. But if you're feeling good in those matchups, you can run First Strike and be as greedy as possible, because of course if you manage to win lane with First Strike, it's just even better. Now as for the runes in this tree, you are going to be taking free boots because like I said, the scaling style, extra 300 gold for free, and then you're going to be running cookies or futures market. Now I do recommend cookies, of course. You are going to run into mana issues without it, but again, if you feel like there's a lot of games where you're just sitting on 3 cookies, you can greed for futures market instead. Now you're still going to be taking Cosmic Insight, because if you run this page, you're not going to be taking Ignite most of the time. You're going to be taking TP Flash, so Cosmic Insight is going to be a lot better. And as for your secondary runes, you are going to be running the Resolve tree with Second Wind, because of course, even though you are up against a free matchup like an Ornn or a Maokai, they're still going to be looking to poke you down. So the extra regen is going to help a lot. And then you're going to be running Overgrowth or Shield Bash. Now Shield Bash if you want to be playing a bit more aggressive, but if you want to be max scaling, just sit back and farm your First Strike, you can run Overgrowth as well. It is up to you. And as for the rune shards, you're going to be running double adaptive and scaling HP. You can run double scaling HP if you want, but I found having double adaptive is still going to be really good for early trades, especially pre-first base, because you don't want to be taking extended trades like you would with Conqueror. You're going to be playing more so the Grasp style. Just keep in mind your damage and the trade is not going to be as powerful because you're going to be mainly playing for that extra gold instead. Now, before I finish with the rune section, I'm going to go through some runes that I didn't mention that you might be surprised about. And the first page is going to be the Press the Attack page. Personally, there is no situation where I think this is good in top lane. It is quite good on mid lane Camille and even jungle Camille, but I would never take it in top lane. And my reasoning for that being is mid lane is a lot more about skirmishing than 1v1. The supports constantly roam mid, jungle goes mid quite often, it's a lot more around the 2v2, 3v3, and PTA is going to help in that skirmish situation. And in jungle, it's going to be very similar. You're either going to be 2v1ing someone or 2v2ing most of the time, so PTA is going to help in that situation, where in top lane, your individual laning power is the most important. You can't rely on your jungle to always help you. There's not going to be as many 2v2s as there would be in a different role. So you're having as much laning power as possible from Grasp, from Fleet, from Conqueror is going to be the most important, so there's just no situation where I personally would see that PTA is better than Conqueror in top lane. And the final rune people take that I don't agree with is the Approach Velocity rune, where the theory behind it is if you hit your W, the bonus movement speed is going to allow for you to hit your Q, which can be true in a lot of situations in early points of the lane, but the value of this rune gets heavily outscaled by different runes, by Cosmic Insight or by Triple Tonic. These runes give you a lot more proactive value than Approach Velocity would, and also on the season, there's no Divine Sunderer. You're going to be building Triforce every game, so the bonus movement speed from Phage or from Triforce is going to allow for you to do that no matter what. So you don't really need to have that rune. You don't really need to take Approach Velocity. And also another factor is that if you're in a ranged matchup, a lot of times you are going to be taking Fleet. And so the extra movement speed from that rune is going to allow for you to do the same thing. So you don't really need Approach Velocity. It's better for you to take a stronger laning rune or a stronger scaling rune. Moving on to your summoner spells. Now spells are quite simple on Camille as you only really have 2 options, and that is going to be either TP Ignite or TP and Flash. Now TP Ignite is best in matchups where they're going to be looking to contest you in the side lane and fight a lot, and champions that have a lot of healing. So champions like Fiora, champions like Gwen, champions like Renekton, TP Ignite is very valuable. Even champions like Dr. Mundo, they have a lot of healing, is quite good, but mainly you're going to be taking it in matchups where they're going to be fighting you. There's going to be a lot of action, so you want to be having as much combat power as possible. Now Flash, TP Flash is best in matchups where you're up against a ranged champion, so you can have Flash to get onto them, where you can E-Flash them, or for example if you're playing up against a Gnar and you try to E him, he is going to E away if he knows what he's doing, and then you can use your Flash to follow and hit the E-Flash onto him to allow for you to all in. Now you can also take Flash up against tanks, so if you're up against champions like Malphite, champions like Ornn, of course Ignite is not that valuable. So you can take Flash and scale better into the teamfights, into skirmishing, later points of the game, and the extra combat power from Ignite and side lanes is probably not going to make a difference against those champions. But I would take Ignite if you're up against Cassante, because he's a bit different. He's not just a tank, he does everything in the game, so having as much combat power as possible to shut him down is going to be very useful. But most of the time, if you're up against a tank or a ranged champion, TP Flash is going to be the way to go. Now, those 2 combinations of runes are what you're going to take almost every single game, but there are some slight variables where you can take TP Exhaust if you're up against a Kennen, where Exhaust is really good against that champion because it's really hard for him to get a good ulti onto your team, or even 1v1. If you just exhaust when he ultis, really hard for him to fulfill his job in the game. But most of the time, it is going to be those 2 combinations, TP Ignite or TP Flash, and you might be asking if you can take Ignite Flash, try to greed and get both, and that can be good in lower elo brackets, or if you're just uncomfortable using TP, you don't have a good understanding of how to use it. But most of the time on Camille, you want to be using your TP very smart in the early game. to either get to your Triforce unscathed, or you want to be using TP so you can roam around the map and TP back to lane and not lose anything. Because Camille is one of the best top laners in the entire game at roaming around and trying to make picks in mid and bot, so having TP to get back to lane is going to be a lot more impactful than having Ignite and Flash, even if it gives you slightly more combat power in your 1v1. Up next, we're going to be covering the item builds. Now, as for your starting item, you're going to be running either Doran's Blade or Doran's Shield, depending on your matchup, where Doran's Shield is best in matchups where they're going to be looking to poke you down. So champions like GP or any range champion, champions like Ornn, D-Shield is going to help you a lot, and Doran's Blade is going to be great in matchups where they can't do so, and you want to be able to fight them back. Not always the case. For example, up against Jax, he can't really take short trades against you, but you still run Doran's Shield, as you can't really fight him back with your D-Blade as he has his E up. So just most of the time, keep in mind if you're not sure what to take, you can default to Doran's Shield, and especially if you have the Grasp page and you want to be taking short trades, D-Shield is quite good, and D-Blade is a bit better with the Conqueror page, but of course you don't just take D-Blade every time you have Conqueror or Shield with Grasp. It really does depend on the matchup, but I will go through each matchup in the matchup section, but for now just run Doran's Shield in matchups where they're going to be looking to poke you down, and D-Blade in matchups where you can look to all in them. Now, as for your first buy, if you're running the Grasp page or the Fleet page or First Strike, Sheen is going to be a great pickup for you. If you can get Sheen and Refillable, that is a great first recall. But if you're running the Conqueror page or you can't afford Sheen, then you can just go double longswords refillable, or even just one longsword and refill. Now, you can go one sword and ruby and refill, but I would stay away from having Doran's Shield, ruby crystal, and a refillable. You're just not going to have any damage. So keep in mind that you either need to have Doran's Blade if you're going an early ruby, or just an extra sword as well. Now, another first item you can buy on your first recall, if you're feeling quite rich, you can go Tiamat in certain situations, where most of the time you are going to be rushing Triforce, but you can go Tiamat into Triforce in situations where you don't really want to be playing for the 1v1 advantage. It's better for you to spread your love around the map. So for example, you're playing up against a Sion, it doesn't really matter if he's 0-0 or 0-4, you've probably versed a lot of inting Sions. In that matchup, it's better to go Tiamat as your first item, so that you can just get the wave in as fast as possible, keep him stuck, and then roam around. Try to attack mid, try to attack the enemy jungle, because even if you kill the Sion, he's still going to be Sion, he's still going to be a meatball, and also he's going to clear the wave with passive regardless. But most of the time when you're up against these tank matchups, it's not as good to play for the pure 1v1 advantage. It's better to push them under tower and roam around and try to attack the rest of the map. Now, there are some exceptions, of course. If you're up against a Cassante, you do want to get Triforce as fast as possible and have combat power to beat him, because that matchup he can easily force onto you. It's hard for you to just keep him stuck under tower. So even if you have Tiamat, he's going to try to fight you, so getting your Triforce and having as much early combat power as possible so that you actually have the ability to beat him in an all-in, it's going to be better. But most of the time, if you just want to nullify the lane and not play it, you can just go Tiamat and play to roam. Moving on to your first item, it's going to be the Triforce every single game. This is the best first item on Camille, where even if you go Tiamat as your first item, you don't want to be rushing Ravenous Hydra before you get to this Triforce, because you spike really hard on this item. It works really well with your Qs and just in general what you want to be doing on this champion, so you will be rushing it every single game regardless. As for your boots, you do have a bit of variety. You can go Mercury Treads in games where they have a lot of tenacity, and I strongly recommend going Merc Treads if you need them. This is a boot that you really feel regret if you don't buy it in games where you need it, or you can go Plated Steel Caps in games where they have heavy physical damage. So if they're versus AD top jungle, for example, maybe you're up against Briar jungle and a Jayce top, then of course Plated Steel Caps are going to be great, but I've actually found on Camille, either going Swiftness boots or Lucids are going to be really valuable for you. They're so cheap, and the extra early haste doesn't hurt anyone, so Lucids in games where you have Flash and TP is going to be great, but if you have Ignite TP, I actually really love Swiftness boots on this champion, or even if you're in certain matchups. So if you're up against an Olaf, where he relies on the slow from his Q, champions like Nasus needs his W, Singe, Swiftness boots are a great early pickup, and even in the matchup up against Cassante, I found Swiftness boots are a game changer, because once he has Iceborne, it's really hard to kite him around and play off your true damage kicks, but if you have Swiftness boots, it helps you kite him around a lot more easy, and of course the boots are so cheap, it's just a great pickup overall. So in games where you don't need steel caps, and you don't need Merc Treads, Swiftness boots are going to be a really good pickup for you. Moving on to your second item. Now most of the time, this is going to be Ravenous Hydra. Will upgrade your Tiamat. It's really hard to play Camille without Tiamat. Your wave clear is so terrible, so you do need to at least get a Tiamat, and you will be upgrading this because it's a lot cheaper to upgrade Tiamat to Ravenous Hydra than of course other items, and also Ravenous Hydra is a great item, especially after the buffs. The AoE wave clear, AoE lifesteal, feels really good on Camille, especially for eating camps, but there are some games where you don't want to be straight up rushing it. Now I strongly recommend doing flexible building on Camille, and what I mean by that is if you have Triforce and Tiamat and you base, 1100, 1500, doesn't matter, just pick up the Cauliflower Hammer instead of the Vamp Scepter, because if you have the hammer, it builds into so many items that Camille wants to have. So if you base later on with quite a lot of gold, you can have Triforce, Tiamat, and a Death Stance or a Sundered Sky, and you're going to spike a lot harder than if you had Triforce, Ravenous Hydra and then another Cauliflower Hammer, for example, it's a lot better to sit on tier mid and upgrade another item if you can, but of course if you base for enough gold for Ravenous Hydra, then just finish it off. Or unless you desperately need MR or armor, then of course you can look to get your more, delay your Ravenous Hydra into more or Death Dance, but most of the time you are going to have Triforce Rev, but I strongly recommend sitting on the hammer so that you can flexibly build into other items if you have the ability to do so. Now, as for the best situation for each item, you're going to be building Death's Dance against heavy physical damage comps. Maybe they have a Fed Assassin like a Kha'Zix or a Zed, then Death's Dance is going to help you a lot, and you can go more up against Fed AP champions. So if they have an Evelynn or maybe they have a Fed Syndra, more is going to help you a lot. And Sundered Sky is great in games where you're either snowballing really hard, or you just want to have as much side lane power as possible, and you don't really feel like you desperately need to resist. Now, as for the Sterak's, this item is great on Camille. Having Triforce Tiamat Sterak's or Triforce Hydra Sterak's feels really great because even though you don't have armor or MR, it's really hard to pick and choose in certain games, but they might have fed AD and AP champions, so Sterak's is going to help you a lot and stop you from getting bursted, especially in games where maybe they have strong physical damage threats, but not that bad. So maybe you're up against a Riven top, they have an AP jungle, pretty standard comp, and you already have plated steel caps for your 1v1, then you can look to pick up a Sterak's if you don't really need MR that badly. So if you don't need a resist desperately, you can look to pick up Sterak's, and the bonus HP and shielding is going to be a better all-rounder item. Now, as for your third item, if you haven't upgraded your tier meta at this point, you can do so. And in games where you feel like side lane is just not a factor at all, you can actually build into Titanic Hydra. So you feel like the game's just perma ARAM, perma grouping, perma team fighting, you don't have a chance to go side, it's a 100 kill game, 80 kill game, you can just build into Titanic Hydra, because it's going to give you a bit more beef and it'll make it a lot easier for you to go in, but Ravenous Hydra is going to be better over 90% of the time, as you do want to be playing side lane to some degree on Camille. Now, as for the other items we haven't touched on, Spear of Shojin actually works really well with Camille's Q. It gives you a lot of bonus true damage, but I don't really like this item on Camille in general, because the way Camille works, with the extra ability haste on your spells, you don't really need it for your Q, your W, your E. Those spells cooldown are so low already at later points in the game, and having them up slightly quicker doesn't really do anything. Camille is not really spell-based except for her Q, but her Q is already such a low cooldown it doesn't matter. Now, this item can still be great, but I wouldn't really build this over a Sundered Sky. The only time I'd build this item are in games where I'm snowballing really hard, or up against a really tanky comp that has low damage and you don't really need defensive stats in general. Now, to round off your build with your last two items, most of the time you want to be building at least one armor item and one MR item so that you don't get one-shot by a specific damage type. Now, that's not always going to be the case. Of course, if they have a full AD comp or a full AP comp, you can just stack MR or stack armor, that's fine, but something you might notice that almost all of these items give you is physical damage. Even though you want to be building defensive items at this point, you want to be building items that give you AD as well because Camille scales so well with that stat, specifically on her Q2. Now, there are going to be some niche situations, maybe versus a full AP comp, you can go Kanak Ruka and stuff like that, but most of the time you want to be building defensive items that give AD, so items like Moore, items like Sterak's are going to be best for you. But of course, as you're rounding off your build, Jaxo the Protein is a great pickup. So let's say you have a Death Dance and a Moore already, Jaxo is a great item, just because the item is so powerful, especially when you already have one of each resist type. This can be a great pickup if you need to be a bit beefier in the game, but also GA and Zhonya's are great items. Now, GA, you should lean towards GA, of course, because it gives AD, but Zhonya's can be good in specific situations where you desperately need that stopwatch. Where Camille was a massive stopwatch user, in the past, you'd always pick up an early stopwatch after your first or second item, so that you could engage with your ulti and just stopwatch and stay in the middle of it. Now, Zhonya's gives you the ability to do so, but of course the AP doesn't really help you, especially in side lane, so only build this item in games where you already win the side lane and you feel like you need more teamfight engage threat, you're the primary engage, and you don't want to get blown up in one shot. Zhonya's can be a great pickup. Most of the time it is going to be your last item, but picking up an early Seekers for a big Baron fight can be a huge thing for you. Now, as for the full build examples, most of the time your build is going to look like this. It's going to have Triforce, Ravenous Hydra, then either Sterak's or Death's Dance or more, depending on the game. Then just rounding it out with items similar to that. You can go GA if you need it, or Jaxo the Protein, but most of the time you're going to have 5 AD items, and a lot of them are going to give you defensive stats as well. Next up, we're going to be covering the laning phase, and I have quite a few examples here, so I'm going to be going through the most important concepts to ensure you have a good laning phase on Camille, and the first one is going to be playing around your passive and your grasp and taking short trades. You want to be taking short trades, and if possible, you want to be taking 100 to 0 trades, where you're doing damage to your opponent without taking damage in response, and trying to stay high HP while you get them lower and lower, where having your passive of course block a lot of incoming damage, and taking trades with grasp is going to really help you to do so. Now in this matchup I'm playing up against a Gwen, where of course even if I took Conqueror in this lane, I'm not going to beat her in an all-in, she's just going to chew me up with her Q and her ulti, so I really want to be taking short trades with grasp. As you can see, W and auto attack, you can't retrade onto me, and I'm trying quite hard to dodge the center part of her Q so I don't take that much damage. So I'll fake going for a minion like that and bait her into using her Q so I only get hit by the outer ring. So this is not a matchup where 100 to 0 trades are possible, but I want to be doing as much damage to her as possible while taking small damage in response. But there you saw, I allowed her to Q and auto attack me even though she was going to get level 2 before me. Now my reasoning for that is I wanted her to hit me so all of my minions chased her, to do a bit of damage of course, but also for her to ruin her wave. Because she did that, now her wave is going to crash on wave 2, which means I can farm outside my tower and trade onto her with quick ease a lot easier. Where that's a good skill you can pick up, especially in matchups such as Gwen or Renekton where they have strong AoE spells, because you want your lane state to be here so that you can utilize your E. Of course, if your lane is in the center of the lane, your wave is in the center of the lane, you can't utilize your E at all, so it's really hard to win trades against her. As you can see, E auto W, run away, 100 to 0 trade. I did damage to her without taking any response and then just threw it away by letting her Q me there. But you can see the general concept. Short trades with your W, your passive, your auto attack, and even a E auto walk back. And I use W so that if she walked towards me, of course she's going to have to tank the W, so she E backwards. So trying to stay as healthy as possible while doing damage to her. Of course I made mistakes in this lane, but there's a lot of good concepts we can take away from it. Now, another point about Camille, it's because your wave clear is so terrible, you want to be slow pushing and building big waves to give yourself a recall. Because here, for example, if I wanted to base and try to clear this wave, it's just not going to happen. I'm not going to get this wave in time because my wave clear is so terrible. So it's really important to slow push, get the wave in, get it built as big as possible. As you can see there, E auto, short trade, run away, trading around my grasp and my passive and not letting her trade back onto me. So as you can see here, I'm last sitting really slowly, trying to build this massive wave so that I can guarantee myself a recall. And here, I'm pretty sure I utilize triple tonic. And there's another concept in this lane here that I'm going to show shortly, where I utilize my ignite here, level 4 verse 3, even though there's a really high chance I can't kill her. I utilize my ignite and all in, so that now she has to sit far back. She doesn't want to die, so she has to respect me and allow for me to get this wave in. Because if I didn't do that and she got level 4 in front of me, and maybe their jungler was topside, it can be really hard for me to get this wave in. But now, I've successfully done my early game objective. I've ping-ponged the wave back and forth in a matchup where they get prior. I've crashed it, and now the wave is going to come back towards me, and I can choose to hold my TP if I want to, and use it in a later point of the lane. So now heading back to lane, I'm going to be looking to trim the wave as it comes in, take short trades, but my main objective is to stay high HP. Because it's unrealistic for me in this game to try to freeze my wave outside of my tower, try to kill him level 5 vs 5. It's not going to happen. I'm not playing Olaf, I'm not playing Darius, I'm playing Camille. In this matchup, I'm happy if I can get to my Triforce unscathed, and then my trades are going to be a lot more meaningful. However, that doesn't mean I'm going to sit back and do nothing and just wait for Triforce and just, twiddle my thumbs. I'm going to be looking to take short trades against her and punish her if I can. So here you can see I drop a ping for Rengar if he wants to gank. But looking back, that's probably not going to be a good gank for him, so I'm glad he didn't come. But here, as you can see, that was a bit of a bad trade by me. But short trades, try to get the wave as it comes in, but slow push it. And here, I can see Gwen's moving, so I'm spam pinging. Because if you're in a bad matchup and they get pro, you have to make sure they're not impacting the rest of the map if you can. But I'm not going to be moving myself. This wave is too big, and even though Camille is very good in skirmishes, she can run around, she has really long range engage, it's hard for you to leave in this type of situation because your champion, inherently you want to be playing selfish on Camille, even though you have the opportunity to help your team a lot. Because you have really long range engage, it's still a champion where you need a lot of resources on, so you don't want to be falling behind. But as you can see, I can't hard push this wave, so I'm slow pushing, looking to take short trades with her, get a true damage Q and run away with passive, and just look to permanently take short trades against her until she's low enough for an all-in. And as you can see, my second ignite's coming back up soon. Short trade here, bait out her ulti and just E away. Because if you E onto Gwen, you just kind of get run down with Q and ultis, so you want to be forcing short trades with your Q and W, and using E to disengage or E to execute her when she's already low. So as you can see here, I'm trying to stop her from crashing this wave. My lane is in such a great position, and I'm going to be looking to punish her if she tries to get this wave in. So this is a result of all these short trades we've taken before, baiting out her spells. Now it's easy for me to all in, dodge her Q with ulti, finish her off with E. As you can see, use the E for the execute, but in that situation she didn't have ulti, I could have E'd. I was just holding on to it until after she utilized her E to guarantee that it hit 100%. Facing right here on the freeze, and the lane is won. But there's a lot of concepts to take away from this lane. It's going to be different every time, but as long as you're taking short trades and staying high HP, utilizing your grasp and your passive, you're going to be fine in most matchups. Moving on to our next matchup. In this game, we're up against Gnar, and I found in this lane it's best to take Conqueror, because it's hard to take short trades against him with Grasp. Of course, he's playing a ranged champion, and you don't really need Fleet. His damage is not that significant, and because he's a short range champ, you can actually look to get onto him with your E and abuse your Conqueror, and because of his build and the fact that he has a Mega Form, he is better in all-in situations than a champion like a Jayce or a Teemo, so having the extra damage from Conqueror is going to help you a lot in this lane. Now, as you can see, I'm trying to let him push in this matchup and take short trades and stay high HP, because even though I have Conqueror and I want to be all-inning him, it's really hard in the center of the lane. I need it to be on my side of the lane, so I can look to all-in him, and it's a lot harder for me to all-in him on his side of the lane, because of course he's a ranged champion, he can stand near his tower, but in melee matchups where you take Conqueror, of course it's better to get pushed if you can. In this matchup, even though I could try to ego push if I wanted to, I'm happy to let him push and try to fight him on my side of the lane. Especially in this game, where my jungler is pathing down, I'm not going to get any help by him. My lane state being here is a lot better for me. But anyway, as you can see, short trades with W staying high HP, because I want to be looking to all in him when the wave is in a good position for me, because right now, there's no way I can hit an E onto him, so it's really hard for me to reach him, so I'm happy with this kind of lane state. But you can see I wasn't sitting back and doing nothing the whole lane, I'm doing that now, but I was trying to trim the wave so that when it gets to this point, the wave is not so big that it's impossible for me to clear it. Now I try to hold it here, use my E to dodge his W, take a little trade, because I want my wave to be on this side of the lane, this position in the lane as much as possible, so that I can actually utilize my E properly. So I'll trim the wave, get rid of the cannon that we hate, and then I'm going to be looking to trade onto him aggressively with my E. So you can see, waiting for him to have the casters left over, they're a lot closer to my side of the lane, and now I'm going to be looking to trade onto him. Prep my Q already, so I have my true damage kick, and all in him, and he has to pop Ghost. I cancelled his E with my E, because I did a quickie, I didn't stay on the wall for too long, instantly jump off so that it's hard for him to react to it. And if he did, he's jumped all the way away, it's harder for him to chase you down the lane. Now, wave is still in a good position for me, and something you should know in this matchup, Camille's E is shorter cooldown than Nazi, so I'm going to be looking to abuse that fact, going straight away. Pretty sure his E was back up though, cancel it again, and now I'm able to easily kill him. However, even if he didn't fail that E, and I made a mistake, I should have taken Flash in this matchup, you would follow his E with your Flash to ensure you're all in. So the Ignite was a mistake on my part, but most of the time in this matchup, this is how you want to be playing it, trying to get the wave in a good position near your tower, so you can look to all in him with your E, and even trying to cheese him level 1 with your E. But I've actually versed this specific Gnar many times in this matchup, so he didn't let me cheese him. However, in most cases, letting him push in and trying to punish when the wave is on your side of the lane is going to help you a lot in winning this type of matchup. Our next matchup is going to be Camille versus Garen, and even though the concept is very similar, looking to take extended trades with your Conqueror, the matchup is just so different, and of course Garen's a very popular champion, so I thought it would be a great example. So as you can see here, already right off the bat, the way I trade is going to be very different than versus Gnar. I'm trying to get behind him, and I start a Q to abuse my Conqueror, my bone plating, and my passive to really get a great trade against him. So it's really important that I try to get push in this matchup so that I can play on the bounce back and shut down this champion early, because of course Garen scales like a monster. So here's spacing out his E, he's trying to get push as well, but it's easy for me to get push as I win level 1, and I'm looking to punish him. So now, as you can see, next trade, I W him, but I don't extend the trade any longer because my passive was on cooldown. So mainly playing around passive, I was going for a cheeky Q2, but in general, you still play around your passive, but you want to be taking extended trades with your passive, not just short little grasp trades. As you saw there, I hit W, but that time I tried to run towards him and abuse my level 3 verse 2 there. So really good trading all in all, and it's really important for me to crash this wave and play off the bounce back and shut this guy down early. Because of course Garen doesn't have TP, so if I can play off the bounce back and stop him from crashing a wave himself, it's going to be really hard for him to recall without losing a lot of creeps. So I even pinged for the jungle to dive here, but he just wanted a full clear. That's fine, it's up to him. And now I'm going to be basing, even though I don't really need to. I don't need to base, I'm full HP, high mana. I'm basing to get an extra longsword to give me more all-in threat against him. Because now I'm going to have D-Blade, longsword against Orange Shield, and of course I already took great trade from earlier. And the reason I TP'd instead of walking is so I can trim the wave and poke Garen as the wave comes in, so that once the wave is near my tower, it's a lot easier for me to punish him. However, I do make a mistake in this lane. I did over-trim my wave, where I want to be trimming the wave, removing some minions, so that once I try to freeze it outside my tower, there's not just, 20 minions I have to deal with that's just beating me up. There's just a couple more minions in my wave, so it's easy for me to freeze. I'm trying to trim it to do that. And also so he doesn't level up a lot faster than me. But in this game, I over-trim. I clear the wave too fast, so that it takes longer for it to come to my side of the map. It's still fine, I still get the advantage in the end, but that's the problem you need to watch out for. Sometimes you can over-trim when you're desperate to get the kill, and in this game I was. It's a really high scaling champion. I do want to be getting ahead of him early game and abusing the advantage I got from my first recall. As you can still see, still trading with him as the wave comes in. I don't want to let him just regen back to full HP with his passive and trimming the wave. So as you can see by the wave right now, I did over-trim it slightly, and I even dropped the ping because I know in 30 or 45 seconds, this guy's going to be a free kill. Come if you want, but I didn't drop 20 pings because I knew I'm going to kill him regardless without my jungler. So as you can see, forcing trades, if he based right now, he would lose a lot. Look how big this minion wave is coming back towards me. It would completely destroy this wave and the next one, and he would be down almost a full level, maybe 3/4 of a level. So he chooses to stay. I'm guaranteed an advantage. If he based, I would have trimmed this wave and based myself and came back to my already kept frozen wave with my XP advantage and still punished him. But he chose to stay and try to get this wave in. So I'm of course going to be looking to all in him, and now I'm trimming the wave a bit faster to get level 6, trying to poke him as much as I can, and then I'm going to be looking to all in him with my Ignite and Conqueror. So as you can see, as soon as I hit 6, just running him down and killing him and just completely stat checking him because the trades are a lot better for me and I have an extra item over him from the way I played my early lane. Our next matchup is going to be Camille versus Malphite, and the concept I want to teach is don't just rely on winning your lane every game to get an advantage on this champion, abuse your early roam power. Because in this matchup, even if I make this Malphite go 0-5, 0-6, he's still going to be Malphite. He's still going to be a tank and a hard engaged threat for his team, so getting him behind is not as important as getting a champion such as Gwen behind. So as you can see, I'm trying to get pushed, trying to take little trades against him, but I don't actually care about this matchup this much, because as I saw from Champion Select, the mid matchup is Katarina versus Yasuo, and if anyone that's played solo queue recently, you know that whoever wins that mid matchup is going to win the game. So I really want to be looking to get a part of that mid matchup if I can. So 3-wave crash, and as soon as the 3rd wave comes in, I'm trying to get it in as quick as I can, and I eat the Malphite here, not just for the trade, but also to get the bonus attack speed from my E, so it can help me get the wave in even faster. And as you can see, as soon as I got the wave in, I'm coming straight to mid lane. I'm running straight here, melee versus melee matchup, very volatile. I want to be helping as much as I can. And in this game, they actually have Draven versus Killister as well. So if I wanted to, I could have based to ran bottom and ganked and TP back top. You have so many options on Camille, but here I saw a huge wave stacking for mid. It's just a 100% play, so I chose to take this one instead. And of course, my bot lane's already been 2v2 killed, the solo queue special, so there's no really room for me to go there. So I roam mid, kill him, and now I'm just going to base and TP straight back to top, and even though I didn't get a 1v1 advantage over Malphite, I've already impacted the game from my early laning. I'll show one more example of this. In this game, I'm playing up against a GP. Now, this one's not quite as simple. It's not a Malphite top with a crazy matchup mid. The mid matchup is Diana TF. Pretty stable in early lanes, and of course up against GP, I do want to be playing to punish him early game, but there was an opportunity for me to attack the rest of the map in this game, so of course I took it. So I'll skip the early lane, it doesn't matter too much, but as you can see, I'm just looking to get push, take little trades against him, and then look to impact the map if I can. Where if there was no opportunity, I would allow the wave to come back towards me and punish this GP when the wave is outside my tower. Hopefully my jungler would help as well. Of course, he's playing Kayn, the champion that's not really famous for helping your team. But as you can see, I get my wave in and I roam around. Because if I stayed in my lane, it doesn't really do anything, so I'm at least roaming to have that option to do so. And here I can see an opportunity to punish mid, take out this TF, and run straight back to top. So a free opportunity presented itself for me to attack mid, so I did, but if there was nothing there, I would have gone back to top and looked to punish this GP as the wave's coming in and punish outside my tower. So you do need to be flexible with your game plan. You can't just lock in, I'm roaming no matter what, I'm playing selfishly no matter what. It is going to depend on the situation, but there are going to be signs of it in Champ Select that you can look out for. Next up, we have abilities, tips, and tricks. And as for your maxing order, you want to be maxing your Q into E into W, and of course putting a point in ulti whenever you can. Starting with Camille's Q, and the first tip is the Q will actually give you bonus range, so it can be very useful to punish the opponent when they go up for last hit to abuse the extra range of the spell. Both parts of the Q are also auto attack resets, which is extremely important and something you need to be able to utilize consistently. Your Q will not only give you bonus damage, but it will also give you bonus movement speed, which is extremely important for the way you trade in most matchups. You can also buffer the Q through crowd control, which can be really OP in matchups such as Jax or Renekton, where they're heavily relying on their stun to stop you from applying your passive. Now, a tip with your Q is you should always be looking to pre-stack it before you go in any type of skirmish or teamfight situation if you can. If there's a minion, maybe a blast cone, honey fruit, anything, you need to be looking to pre-stack it so that when you fly in with your E, your Q2 true damage kick is already preloaded. You can also cancel the Q animation with your W, which can be really useful in trades such as Qing onto the opponent stepping back with W, or Qing a minion abusing their movement speed to hit your W on the enemy champion. And a cool trick that I haven't seen anyone else pull off is you can actually cancel your Q animation with your W on the blast cone. So if you QW the blast cone, you're going to be flying forward, of course, and your W is going to be repositioned. So you can use this when chasing opponents. Maybe your E is on cooldown or you want to hold on to it, and it can be very useful in these situations when they're running away near a blast plant. You can also cancel the Q animation with E, which can be very strong in lane, especially with poking your opponent under tower. You can preload your Q on a minion, get your Q2 ready, Q2 and E away, and you're going to be able to cancel the Q animation with your E and get away from that trade and not tank a tower shot. And even if you do tank one, you're going to tank it up with your passive, so it's going to be a great trade regardless. You can also cancel the Q animation with your R, so if you're jumping onto someone, you're just about to kick them, true damage kick their head off, and they're about to use a key spell on you, maybe Gnar ult you away, something like that, you can cancel the Q animation with R, you'll still get the damage off and also evade their spell and get your ulti down. Something to watch out for, if you Q a minion, it's of course going to put your Sheen or Triforce on cooldown, and if you rush into your Q2 before your Sheen is back off cooldown, you're not going to get that bonus damage, so you really have to be spacing out your Qs correctly to utilize that extra damage. Now, we already talked about pre-stacking your Q on a minion, a fruit doesn't really matter, but something you can do to make that easier in a situation where there's nothing nearby is you can pull caps. So, for example, the enemy's fighting dragon, you start doing raptors, you pull the raptors towards the camp before you use Q, pull them towards dragon, and then you stack your Q when it's already near the river so that you have a lot more time to utilize your Q2 before it expires. And even if you're cheesing, maybe you're cheesing in that jungle, clear the whole golems except for a little one, clear the whole raptors, leave a mini raptor, and keep it there even though it auto attack you doesn't do much damage, and utilize the pre-Q as someone's coming in so that you have your true damage Q cocked and loaded. You can also Q flash, which can be great for a fadeaway, maybe kick someone's head off and flash away, or great in a matchup such as Pantheon when you want to reposition, true damage kick flash behind him and you can avoid his E. You can also Q Tiamat, cancel the Q animation with Tiamat, which feels quite smooth as well. And something to keep in mind, even though stopwatch is now gone, you can still build Seeker's Arm Guard or Zhonya's. So if you go in, maybe you E ulti someone, pop your Q. If you Q1 and then stopwatch or Zhonya, sorry, by the time you get out of your stasis, your Q2 is going to be ready to go, so it can be a nice little trick to maximize your damage. Up next, we're going to be covering lane trading and combos. So these are either going to be combinations of spells used in lanes for favorable trades, or just a general combo, or I'll specify as I go through it. So we'll start with a laning combo where auto attack Q, auto attack Q. Very standard, cancelling your Q animation, but a lot of people feel the need to wait for the true damage Q, when if you do that, your passive is probably going to expire, and they're going to be able to retrade onto you. So if you just auto Q, or maybe just auto QQ, it's going to be a lot easier for you to finish the trade with your passive still up and not get retraded on. The next combo is QWQ. You're going to be queuing a minion, you get bonus movement speed and to prime your Q2, and that bonus movement speed is going to allow for you to hit your W. Now once your W is hit and they're slowed, it's going to be a lot easier for you to close that distance and hit your Q2 onto them. The next combo, and we briefly touched on it, is queuing a minion to prime your Q2, Eing away, and just before your E hits the wall, hitting your Q2, and the E is going to pull you to safety. Now it's important if you do this combo, that under tower, if you're trying to poke them under tower and you're eating away from it, that you slightly step back towards the tower after kicking them so that it's guaranteed that the tower shot hits your passive, or you can just time it very well, time your QE with the way the tower shot's going, but if the tower's going to hit you, step towards it just in case you don't want your passive to run out and the tower to hit you. Now the next step to that is you can auto attack before you Q as well while you're flying away. So if you're feeling very confident, you can Q a minion, for example, walk towards them, E away, auto Q, and get a bit more extra damage, right? Get that bonus auto attack. It doesn't have to be the empowered Q. You can E away, auto Q, E away, auto QQ if you're very quick and your E distance far. A lot of combos you should mess around with trying to escape with your E and getting as much damage as you can before it pulls you to safety. Now, a nice trading combo you can do, and this will take a bit of practice, and it relies on a wall being nearby, is you lead with auto attack Q. So let's say the enemy champion's next to you, you auto attack Q, EW away, and while you're E2ing towards them, the outer ring of the W is going to hit them, you're going to hit them with your E, and then you can hit another auto attack into Q2. Now you do have to time this quite well, or you're not going to get the outer ring of the W to hit them, but once you can get this down pat, it's going to feel very good for a nice quick trade in lane. And the shorter version of that trade, if they're not in range for you to lead with auto attack Q, just the EWE, trying to practice that timing down, and then you can weave in auto attack Qs afterwards. If that is the case, the way to extend that trade is to EWE plus auto attack Q, then you're going to ulti to either dodge a spell, follow them if they dash away, or just to buy time for your second Q2, and then when you land with your ulti, another auto attack into Q2. And a stronger version of that trade we talked about before, where you're Eing away and trying to get an auto Q down before you get pulled away, let's say they're not under tower this time, is you want to be Eing away, auto Q, W, E forward, and then hit the auto Q2 afterwards. So this trade is best used in situations where you're fighting somebody from close range, you're near a wall, but also you don't want to be just standing there and just tanking all their damage. Maybe you E away to dodge something, or just space them out so they can't stack Conqueror for free. But this one is the extended version of that trade that you use to run away if you want to go back in afterwards. And I'll put a basic combo here where you're going to be Eing onto somebody. Let's say you feel stronger, you can kill them inside. E onto them, auto Q, auto Q2. Step back with the Q2, hit W, and then you can follow up with your ulti if you need to be chasing them down further. Now you can incorporate flash in a lot of these combos, so to give an example, you can E onto the wall, EW, Flash to reposition, hit the outer ring of your W, and then E2. You have to be really fast to pull off this combo and not just fall off the wall after you use Flash, but it can look quite satisfying if you can pull it off in a game. So very similar to the example we covered earlier, where you can E away but get your Q off before the E pulls you, you can also do the same thing while queuing a Blast Cone. So you can shoot out your E, Q the Blast Cone, it's going to push you a bit faster towards your E, but the best benefit of course is that you're going to have your Q pre-stacked, ready to engage onto the opponent. So you would E, Q a Blast Cone, E2, auto attack Q2, and your combo would fit together a bit more smoothly than if you were to just Q the Blast Cone first and then E. Now, at later points in the game, when you have a Tiamat or a Ravenous Hydra, you are of course going to be wanting to slot this into your combos quite smoothly. Now, it's pretty easy to do so, the item feels quite smooth. It's just important you don't cancel an auto attack animation by doing so, and the best time, in my opinion, to use your Tiamat is right after your Q1. Cancelling your Q1 animation with the Tiamat feels the smoothest, so try to slot that into basically any one of these combos. You can also use it during W for the EWE combo, for example. The Ravenous Hydra has quite a long AoE range, so it can fit into basically all of them, but to give an example, you could use EWE, auto attack Q Tiamat, cancel the Q1 animation with Tiamat, auto attack R, auto attack Q2. So that basically sums up all the most useful combos or the way you trade in lane, but I'll go through one more combo and I'll call this one the Legend combo, where you want to be leading with E, you want to Q something before your E pulls your way, and the combo is going to look a little something like this. You're going to lead with EQW, flash E2, auto attack Q2, Tiamat R, and if you can pull this off very smoothly, you're going to look like a machine, so best of luck. Next up, we're going to be covering the matchups, and right here I have two tier lists. One is a general tier list, which should apply to most Elo brackets, but there are going to be some variables, of course, where if you're in an Elo bracket silver and below, for example, and you're up against a Fiora or a Rumble, those matchups will be a bit easier, because the players of that Elo bracket can't really pilot those champions very well in most situations. But if you're in a high Elo bracket, maybe Emerald or Diamond, then those champions might be a bit tougher. But here I have a high Elo tier list. Now this is how I imagine the matchup should play out in a high elo. By challenger player versus challenger player, good at your champion. This is my understanding of the matchups. Due to having a lot of experience, thousands of games on this champion, this is what I would say is pretty accurate. Not to the level of two computers playing against each other, playing the champs perfectly, but in general, a challenger level Camille and a challenger level of one of these champions, this is how I feel like the matchup will play out. Now for this section, I'm going to do something a little different. You guys are probably going to like this. I'm going to go through every single matchup and explain how I imagine the matchup should be played out, what you should be looking to do, what your goals are in this matchup. And if I've played this matchup in Season 14, and I have an example of it, I'll also show that on the screen. I'm not going to have examples of every single matchup. Of course, I haven't versed, let's say, a Wukong recently or anything like that, but any matchup that I have played recently, I'll showcase an example of it and explain my reasoning, the runes I would take, and how I'd play it out. And I'm going to be timestamping it all in the bar down below. So if you ever run into this matchup in Champ Select, let's say you've already watched this guide, you can feel free to open it back up, skip to that matchup, and get a rough rundown on how to play it. But keep in mind, I do want to clarify that this matchup is how I imagine it should be played out, and with my level of mastery on Camille. Or if you're just learning the champion, or if you're playing in a lower elo bracket, it might not play out that way. You might verse a lower elo Renekton and be able to eco prio against him, something like that. So the matchups are going to be different depending on your skill level and your opponent's skill level, but this is just a rough guide to follow. So we'll start with, in my opinion, the hardest matchup, and that is Fiora. Now, in the past, I actually didn't mind this matchup. I felt like it was quite skill expressive, but now that Fiora just rushes Ravenous Hydra, it is a lot harder. Because you can win this matchup in the early points of the lane if you play it exceptionally well, but once she has Tiamat, she just keeps you stuck under tower, and when she has Ravenous Hydra, any short trade poke you do to her, she's going to sustain it back. Now, the best ways to play this matchup is to take Grasp, go Doran Shield second win, take TP Ignite, and to play for really short trades. Now, there are some tricks you can do in this matchup. Keep in mind, you want to be holding your W until she utilizes her Q, because if you W her, she's going to Q towards you, so you need to have discipline and hold this spell. Now, in terms of her parry, there's a trick you can do where you E onto the wall and you hold your E. You don't E2 straight away, you E and make her parry, and then you E2 onto her. Or if you're up against a great Fiora player, you'll E onto the wall and use your second E, but you won't use it directly on her. You won't put your mouse on her, you'll put it slightly to the side. So you'll fly off the wall, right next to her, she'll stop her movement to parry, you'll avoid the parry, not get hit by it, and then you can trade with her as soon as her parry runs out. So a couple of tricks you can do. You can also play in a way where you Q a minion, run up to her, try to Q to her head, she'll parry it, and then you use your E to dodge the parry, the E movement, fly to the wall, as I showed in it's a little bit in my intro as well. But anyway, you fly back towards her and get the trade as her parry runs out. You can also look to dodge her parry with your ultimate if you time it correctly, so you'll still get locked in the Hextech ultimatum, but you will dodge her parry completely. So if you E her, if you mess up and she parries your stun, make sure you dodge it with your ulti or flash, because if you get hit by that spell, you're going to get completely destroyed. Now you want to be playing for these short early trades, and utilizing your Ignite when you can, when she's low HP, trying to burst her down. You don't want to be taking an extended all-in versus Conqueror Fiora, of course, and you mainly want to be playing to set up your jungler. Try to get the wave frozen outside your tower, try to bait her to ruin her wave, keep it stuck, take these short trades. You can even look for really quick E's if she's near the wall, double tap E as fast as you can. That's a really common way to trade against her, really hard for her to react against it, and when she's half HP, a bit chunked, it's easy for your jungler to be set up for a gank. So make sure you don't get punished pre-level 6 in this matchup. If your jungler's pathing down, you really want to be holding out hope that he does come, but you can win this match, don't get me wrong, if you're up against a bad Fiora, you can win this matchup. Just mainly focus on taking short trades, baiting out her parry, or avoiding it at all costs, and just making sure you stay high HP if you can. Next up we have Pantheon, and the win condition in this matchup is get your Triforce unscathed. If you can do that, you're going to be in a great position because you do outscale this champion very hard. The problem is that's quite difficult to do, and Eclipse Pantheon is quite annoying even at that point. So my advice for this matchup is take Grasp, play for short trades, and take TP and Flash. And the reason you need Flash is to reposition when he uses his E. Because the problem with Pantheon is he's really strong early game, of course. If you try to W him, he's going to jump on your head and beat you up. If you try to Q a minion and EQ onto him, he's going to block it with E. So there's no real agency for you in this matchup. You're just going to get beat up. Try to heal it back up with Second Wind and Doran Shield, and just play mainly for ganks in the early levels of the game. And if you can get to your Triforce unscathed, then you can look to punish him. Just make sure you reposition your Q2 with Flash to get behind him. You can Q2 Flash to get that damage down onto him, or even, E onto him. He's going to use his E, and you can try to run around if you don't have Flash, but the worst thing you can do is commit your Q2 onto his E. You really need to be holding that spell or using movement or Flash to reposition. Our next matchup, we have Jax, and a lot of people hate this matchup more than Fiora, because the Fiora matchup takes a lot more skill on the Fiora side, but Jax is quite a hard one because he beats you inside and beats you in lane, but I actually prefer this matchup over Fiora because he has no sustain. Now, the way you want to be playing this matchup is taking Grasp, taking TP and Ignite, and really trying to prioritize short trades. Now, the thing Jax can do, if he's good, is he can time his E so that he can cancel your E away. So it's important that if he Qs onto your head, you E away straight away, because if he Qs without his E preloaded, he can't E2 fast enough to cancel your E. So you need to be Eing to get away from him. And the most important tip for using your E properly is by staying next to a wall permanently. You need to be hugging a wall like it's your best friend. And if he jumps onto your head, you just double tap E, give him a little pushback and run away with your W and take that nice little short trade. It's really important that you don't let him fully commit a stun onto you and punish you. But if he does, if you can buffer your Q2 through his parry, through his E, it's going to be really good for this matchup. It's very difficult to do, so I wouldn't do it unless you're confident. But most of the time, sitting next to a wall trying to E onto him, prioritizing short trades is going to be your best friend. And when his E is on cooldown, if you can space his E without having to utilize your E, it's really good. If you can somehow pop passive, maybe he goes up for a minion and you Q his head and he gets mad and pops E, he runs towards you, you're fine to tank that damage with your passive and then E onto him to retrade. You can win that type of situation quite heavily. But if he's able to hit his E onto you and fully commit that stun, then it can be quite difficult if you're unable to get your passive down in time. So make sure you prioritize short trades at all costs and trying to create space on him when he tries to engage onto you. Our next matchup is Riven. Now this is a matchup where if you can get the Triforce unscathed, you're quite fine, but this one is winnable. If you play it better than the Riven, you can win this matchup, and my advice for it is practice buffering your Q2 through her Q3. When she's going to jump on your head, she's of course going to chain her Q3 with her W. So it's going to make it really hard for you to poke her, to auto-attack her, and get your passive down. But if you buffer a Q1 or Q2, through her knock up, her Q3, then you're going to be able to do damage to her and also get your passive up. So it's going to block a lot of her incoming damage, and then you can look to retrade with E. Now, some more advice is making sure you allow for her to push, respect her level 1 heavily. You can take a short trade with bone plating and with your passive, but once that's on cooldown, you need to sit really far back because she's going to look to get level 2 and just all on you with Ignite and make your life terrible. So just make sure you play around your passive really heavily against this champion. Of course, she's all physical damage. It's going to help you a lot. And make sure you play for those quick trades near the tower. So when the wave is on your side of the lane, when it's close to your tower, go for those really quick double E trades on the wall. Double E, auto attack QQ, run away. Make sure you don't give her time to fully extend the trade and retrade onto you. Next up, we have Gragas, and the problem with this matchup is Camille has very little sustain, but Gragas has a lot of sustain. He has so much healing and so much poke that he can just get you lower and lower and lower and just really play the war of attrition against you, and it's quite hard to deal with. Now, my advice for this matchup is to take Grasp, because it's really hard to use Conquer against him. He's going to disengage with his E or ulti, any type of meaningful extended trade. You want to be trying to buffer your Q through his E if you can, but keep in mind, if you E onto him and he E's you, he is going to win that. He's going to win the headbutt battle, so you really want to be trying to buffer spells through his, buffer your Q, sorry, through his E, taking short trades, proccing Grasp, and really trying to get an early game advantage. Because the 1 to 3, you can actually win. So ideally, you'll be crashing wave 3, letting the wave come back to you, and hopefully your jungler is nice and he's pathing up, and you can play to get a kill on this guy early game, or even play for the solo kill. But I would say take Flash in this matchup. You can take Ignite, to be honest, both are fine. It's more so personal preference for this one. But make sure you play for a pro, you play for short trades, and hopefully your jungler is on your side, so you can either set up a gank, or you can play for a solo kill if you base TP, have better resource in him. This depends on the skill of the Gragas. Of course, this matchup is in his favor, but if you try to punish him early game, try to stay high HP, do little trades against him, you're going to be fine. And if not, you can always look to pick up early Merc trades in this matchup if they have an AP jungler, or you can just do your best to sustain it through the lane with Darn Shield and Second Wind. Next up, we have Renekton, a classic Camille counter, and this matchup can be quite difficult. My advice for it is to take Darn Shield, to take Grasp, and to take Ignite, and really try to poke him down early. Your level 1 is stronger than him if you go for a trade around your passives. It's really important to only trade on this champion when your passive is up. Now, you might be thinking his W just breaks my passive, what am I going to do? And that is true, but that's why it's important to take really quick trades. If you E onto him, maybe you Q a minion, really quickly tap your E, kick him in the head, run away straight away. Don't give him that opportunity to retrade onto you with Empowered W. Make him use double dash, or just take the trade for free. It's really hard for you to win a trade if he can break your passive with his W. Now, some more advice is if he dashes onto you, you can time your Q. You can buffer it so that he hits you with the W, which would initially break your shield. You're buffering your Q through it, and you're going to get your passive. And if you can pull that off, if you can buffer your Q through an X and W, then you can really heavily win the trade. And you want to be trying to get an early advantage against this champion, because you can actually win the early levels. He can hard prior push if he wants, but you can win the early trades. So even though he's getting pushed, if you're playing around your passive and your Grasp proc, you can look to get him low. Maybe even use Ignite for a significant trade, not even a kill. And if your jungler's pathing up, that's going to be nice, but mainly you just want to be playing survive till Triforce in this matchup if you can, but trying to play aggressive in the early lanes when the trades are actually in your favor. Our next matchup is going to be Gwen, and we actually did have an example of this in the laning section of the guide, so you can feel free to watch that. But the general rundown is you want to be taking Grasp with Second Wind and Doran Shield, and prioritizing really short trades in the lane. He's going to get pushed, that's fine. You just want to be taking short trades, playing around your passive and your Grasp procs, and making sure you play to ping pong the waves. Let her crash a big wave, build up a wave yourself, let it ping pong back and forth, and once you get to Triforce unscathed, then you can easily look to punish her. Also, Swifty boots are a great pickup against this champion. Don't get them pre-Triforce, get them after, but it can allow for you to easily kite and try to dodge your ultis when they're slowing you down. And also in this matchup, if you can dodge her Q with your ulti when you go for an all-in, that's going to help you a lot. Her Q does significant amount of damage, so if she QEs towards you and you buffer your ulti, so that your champion's already ready to jump away and dodge the Q. That's going to be very helpful for you, and making sure you prioritize using short E's near the wall. Because if you just E onto a max range E, she's going to E backwards with Q, and you're going to be flying straight into a Q, straight into the center part. So it's important you go for the quick E's to try to catch her off guard, and making sure you only commit your E onto it if you're ready to kill her. Because if you don't, if you try to E onto her for a little trade, she's just going to run you down with ulti. Next matchup is Darius. Now against Darius, it's really important you don't give him his win condition, which is taking fully extended all-ins down the lane with Ghost. You want to be taking Grasp with Ignite and running Doran's Blade, as you don't need Doran's Shield, he's not going to poke you. All he's going to do is all-in you, and playing for the really short trades, playing around your Grasp, your passive, and making sure he can't get any type of meaningful trade onto you. Don't let him ever get 5 stacks if you can avoid it, and a good type of trade against Darius is queuing a minion, E onto him, kick his head with Q2, using W as you space backwards so that he can't retrade onto you and pull you in. Now, the really good Dariuses can actually catch you in the air with a Z, which is why it's really important to do really short trades next to the wall, really quick double taps so that you can kick him and catch him off guard, and that's going to make it a lot harder to queue a minion and do that trade, of course, because he's going to see it coming. So feel free just to E onto him and Q with a Grasp proc and disengage the trade. It's not going to do as much damage, of course, as Q2, but it's going to be a trade that he can't do anything back to you. Like we talked about before, 100-0 trading is the name of the game in this matchup, and when the wave is on his side of the lane, it's really important you hold onto your E and use it for an escape, but keep in mind he can cancel your E If your E hits the wall and then he hooks you, it's going to break the E and you're going to die. So it's really important that you don't let that happen, and you either try to E when you're close to the wall, so he doesn't have a lot of time when he sees the E flying across the screen before it hits the wall, or just making sure you space him with Qs and Ws before he can easily get that hook down. Our next matchup is Jayce. Now, I want to preface this by saying this matchup is very difficult if he has Conqueror. However, if you're up against a Phase Rush or a First Strike Jayce, something like that, this matchup is actually quite easy. Now, what I recommend in this lane is you take TP and Flash, is you're going to need Flash to E-Flash him or to follow his Flash with yours after using E, and you're going to be taking Fleet Footwork and Doran Shield second wind. Now, that's going to give you insane sustain for this lane. You're going to be able to get to Triforce and not be down that much, even up against a great Jayce player. Now, a trait to watch out for is if you try to walk up and W a Jayce like normal, he's going to hammer Q onto you instantly, auto attack E, before you even get a chance to hit him yourself. So it's going to be a really favorable trade for him, so that's something you need to watch out for. You can always check at the start if the Jayce is good by leading with W and seeing if he's good enough to do that, and most Jayces won't actually be able to. But if he's good enough and he pulls that off, you need to be trading with your E. You need to be letting him push early, get the wave on your side of the lane, and leading with E. Even if he hammer E's your way, your E is going to be a shorter cooldown than his, so he has to respect on that timer, and it'll create for you a lot of space in the lane. Now, the problem with Jayce is, of course, he's very easy to gank. Very hard for him to survive jungle ganks, and especially against Camille with your ulti, it's going to be even harder for him. So keep that in mind. If you can keep the lane state very stable until level 6, even though you're feeling bad getting shot and having to regen it back, you're going to be at a fine position at level 6, especially if you can get your jungler involved. Our next matchup is Akali. Now, in this matchup, I recommend taking Doran Shield second wind, taking Grasp, and Ignite. You want to be taking short trades against this champion. Most Akalis are going to take Conqueror in top lane. Her all-in is going to be stronger than you, so you really want to be prioritizing these short trades. Now, if you can avoid her E by abusing your Q movement speed, that's going to be very beneficial. Her E does a lot of damage. Try to dodge her ulti with your ulti as well. A couple of tips, but mainly you just want to be playing for short trades. And if they have an AP jungler, you can actually pick up an early Hex Drinker. Let's say your first recall, you pick up a Sheen and go Sheen Hex Drinker. That's not a bad situation to be in this type of matchup, but I wouldn't go Hex Drinker if it's a solo AP Akali, for example. I'll just go straight Triforce and be willing to drop a couple of CS in a situation where the wave's on his side. But you're happy to take short trades, and levels 1 through 5, you can actually be in a good position in this matchup. You can win trades, especially 1 to 3. Just keep in mind at 6 with Conquer and Ignite, Akali is quite strong. There's a lot of all-in threat, so it's fine for you to give up a couple of CS to get to your Triforce without getting killed. Our next matchup is going to be Illaoi. Now, as for the rune setup in this lane, a lot of it is personal preference. You can run Conqueror with D-Blade if you want to be playing very aggressive early, taking extended trades and trying to punish her pre-6, or you can run Doran Shield and Grasp and try to take very short trades and just play the War of Attrition, try to get to Triforce unscathed. Both options are fine. I do strongly recommend Ignite, however, in this lane, so that you're able to cut down a lot of her healing. In a situation where maybe you're 1v1ing or 2v1ing her, very important to have Ignite for that type of player, but I personally would take Conqueror, because I feel like I really want to be punishing this champion pre-6 before he gets to that oppressive situation where you're stuck under your tower, he has 3 tentacles set up, and he's just fishing for E's all day, misses 20 of them, hits 1, and your lane's over, right? I prefer taking Conqueror, playing for really aggressive trades 1 to 3, allowing the wave to bounce back, and trying to really hard kill her on that timer. So that's my personal preference. If you're uncomfortable in this matchup, you can just farm it out with Grasp, second wind, and Doran Shield. It's up to you, but I would recommend as you get more confidence in this matchup, experiment a bit with the Conqueror setup. Our next matchup is Cassiopeia, and for this lane you have 2 options. You can either run Fleet Footwork with Doran Shield second wind, take TP Flash and play more so for scaling, or you can do the more aggressive option with Conqueror, TP Ignite, and play to kill this champion early. Now, I personally prefer the Conqueror style, and my reasoning for that is Fleet Footwork is great up against a lot of ranged poke champions, but Cassio, her poke relies on her hitting her Qs, relies on her hitting a skill shot, as opposed to just right-clicking you, so I'm feeling confident that I can dodge the Qs. I can utilize my Q movement speed. Let's say I last hit a minion. With my Q, she's going to try to Q me to punish me. I can dodge it with that spell, and then once the wave is on my side of the lane, I can look to all in her with Conquer and Ignite. I'm going to have a lot more significant damage to punish her, and I'll really want to be punishing her before she gets to that strong 1 to 2 item point, where she's really strong and takes over the game. If I can kill her early game with Conquer and Ignite, I'm going to be trying to do so, which is why I prefer to do that instead of me taking Fleet and both of us scaling. Our next matchup is Karma. Now, this lane is quite annoying. I would say she's more of a neutralizer to Camille, where she's just going to keep you poked and pushed under tower the whole lane. And for that, I recommend taking Fleet Footwork, Doran Shield, and second wind, and just playing to sustain until Triforce. Do not delay your Triforce for anything. Don't get tier 2 boots, nothing like that. Just go straight fight Triforce, because once you have it, you actually have significant damage against this champion. And I also recommend taking Ignite, even though Flash is really good against range champs in general. Karma has way too much healing, with her RW, especially with Malignance, having more ultis come up. So having Ignite to cut down their healing and burst her down so the fight doesn't go on too long, going to be very important. Now, as for how to play this matchup specifically, I do recommend trying to just farm it out, trying to dodge her Qs. Of course, bait her to use Q, pretend you're going for a farm or pretend you're going for her, bait her to use it, and just play to sustain, hit Ws onto her. But if she's near your side of the lane, if the wave is near your tower, you can look to E onto her and take a good trade, but mainly the way you're going to kill this champion is with ganks early game, so if you can stay high HP and allow for that to happen, you're going to find a lot of success. Our next matchup is Poppy, which is a historic Camille counter, but I would say Poppy is more of a neutralizer. I would say it's in her favor. It is a Poppy-sided matchup, but the main problem with Poppy is she just completely blocks what you want to do. She just completely blocks if you want to go in with her W or trying to go away, so it's really hard to survive ganks against this champion, as he can just click W and completely deny your E. Now, some advice for this matchup. You should run Grasp, you should run Darius Shield second win, and play more so for short trades around your passive, because all of Poppy's damage basically is physical damage, so you can block all of that with your passive, try to hit your W onto her, and try to use that extra movement speed to close the gap between her, and try to bait out her Q. Try to pretend you're going to run towards her, or go for a farm near her, and make her use Q, and then when that spell is on cooldown, it's a lot easier for you to try to run her down. Now, it is still in her favor, and most likely this matchup is going to be a bit of a farm fest for you, trying to get to your Triforce unscathed, but if you can punish her early game while she's still on Darius Shield, or Corrupting Pot, whatever the Poppy's going to buy, you're going to be in a great position. So try to get push level 1 if you can, try to poke her down around your passive, and as the wave's coming back towards you, that's when you try to punish her, but in general, very, very hard to punish this champion, so I would say just play more so for short trades. Now at level 6, there is a bit more skill expression, where Poppy's ultimate. Her main disengage tool, if you ult onto Poppy's head for a gank or a 1v1, she's going to ult you away. Now you can actually buffer your E very well against this champion. Just as he throws his ulti, you can E, and you're going to fly off the screen, your E is going to hit the wall, it's going to pull you right back down to earth, and then you can hit her with your E too. So quite a fun matchup, I would say, in that aspect, in that regard, but other than that, it's going to be a boring lane where you just farm it out. You try to take short trades with your Grasp, and if you're lucky, you can punish him with a jungle gank, granted that you ult her and you can buffer her ulti with your E. I'd also recommend taking Flash in this matchup, as Poppy, if you're trying to get ganked, and Poppy's going to completely block your E with her W, but if you have Flash, you can Flash E really quickly, flash out of her W range. That's going to give you a much higher chance of surviving this matchup. Moving on to Rumble, and for this matchup you can approach it one of two ways, where you can take Grasp and play more so for surviving lane with D-Shield second win, taking short trades, playing around your passive, or if you're feeling very confident you can run Conqueror and play more so for all-ins. Because the problem with Grasp is it is very difficult to win a short trade against Rumble, where in a lot of matchups you try to chip away at their HP bar, get them lower and lower and all-in later on, versus Rumble. He is very good at those types of trades. He can block your Q, for example, with his W and just cook you down. He's going to get the better end of those trades. He can turn your short trade into a more extended trade for himself. So if you run Conqueror, you have a lot more opportunity to fight him back in an extended situation. With that being said, however, I do strongly recommend playing mainly for jungle ganks in this matchup, trying to stay as high HP as possible, trying to get the wave in a good spot, and try to communicate to your jungler ahead of time the best opportunities to gank. Because if Rumble does not get ahead in the laning phase, he's going to be very weak in a lot of situations. So if you can snowball from your jungler or get him fed and maybe even burn flash, just, ease some pressure off of you, it's going to be very beneficial for the game. Now, you can actually rush Hexdrinker in this matchup. I only recommend it though in games where they have an AP top and jungle. So if they have a Talia jungle with Rumble top, Hexdrinker can be a great rush and it'll give you a lot of survivability in that type of game. But if that's not the case, they have Rumble top, Graves jungle, something like that, then you should just rush Triforce as fast as you possibly can and play more so to all in the Rumble at that spike. Our next matchup is Vayne, and for this lane I recommend running the Fleet Footwork Darius Shield second win setup and playing very heavily for bush control. If you can take over the bush, it's really hard for her to do anything, because if she wards the bush, now she doesn't have a ward, very vulnerable to being ganked. Of course, with a short range champion, it's very easy to get ganked, especially if she wastes all of her wards, or if she doesn't ward it, she can't face check that bush anymore, because if she does, you're going to win the trade quite heavily. Now, something to keep in mind, it can be very risky to W up against a good Vayne player, because he's just going to dodge you with Q, and then his Q cooldown is a lot shorter than your W, and you're not going to have that spell. We want to be holding onto your W, or if he Qs forward onto you, if he rolls in and goes for a shot, which a lot of Vaynes do, then you can W him in response. And if he E's your way to block your W, then you have a big opportunity where he has to respect you, because you can E onto him when his E is on cooldown. Now, it's really important that you let the wave get on your side of the lane. Sometimes it is worth tanking a couple auto attacks as the wave is coming in to make all the creeps turn onto him and ruin the wave so it comes back towards you. Now, once the wave is on your side of the lane, really important, you play for really quick E's onto him. Double tap E as fast as you can, so it's hard for him to dodge with Q, because a lot of times you'll catch a Vayne off guard, and you'll cancel their tumble with your E, and you can get a great auto QQW trade onto him. Now, most of the time you're going to be sustaining with Doran Shield Fleet second win and playing for ganks, because at level 6, really hard for Vayne to survive any type of jungle gank up against Camille, granted you're not low HP or behind at that point. Our next matchup is Yorick, and for this lane, I recommend starting Doran's Blade, taking Grasp, and looking for extended trades in the early lane, because Yorick's actually very weak, levels 1, 2, 3. You want to be taking long trades against him and really punching him down, especially level 1. If you can start Q and get behind him and try to get a very significant trade against him, you're going to be in a great position. Now, I recommend taking Ignite in this matchup if you're confident, but taking Flash if you're feeling unsure, because it's really hard to play if you're not utilizing your movement speed very well. Because if you get trapped in his cage, you're going to struggle. You have to utilize your Qs to pop it. You have to waste potential damage to get out of that cage, or you have to E away in some situations. But if you're feeling really confident at utilizing your Q movement speed, and even Triforce and Phage later on, then you should take Ignite and cut down his healing and give you a lot more all-in threat, so you actually have potential to kill him. Now, something you should know is your ulti pushes everything out of the ring except for the guy you ulti, which applies to all of his ghouls and his minion and his maiden, his mum, whatever it is. You can push all of that out of the ulti and buy yourself some space, stop her from DPSing you, so that can be very useful in a 1v1 situation. Now, the way his cage works with your E is if he times it well, and more so you timing it poorly, if your E hits the wall as his cage is about to spawn, you're getting pulled towards the wall, and his cage comes up, you're going to get stuck in the cage, and you're going to struggle. So it's important to either E quickly, before he starts to spawn his cage, or just to hold onto your E to use it to get out of the cage in a hurry, but if he's in the cage with you, you might need to commit an auto QQ onto it to get rid of it. Now for this lane, at level 6 onwards, it becomes very, very difficult. So if you get to that point and you're not already ahead, you mainly just play for short trades on your side of the lane and playing for Triforce or even playing for ganks, but if you can punish him 1 to 3, that is the ideal. Our next matchup is Quinn. Now for this lane, I do recommend taking Fleet Footwork with Doran Shield second win and TP Flash. And this lane can be quite hard, but I would say it's more of a neutralizer. You can't really E onto her, she can just kick you backwards, and it's really hard to hit your W, she'll just kick you backwards, so it's quite hard to get any meaningful damage done onto this champion. So what I recommend is playing more so for sustaining with Fleet Doran Shield second win, trying to stay high HP, playing more so for ganks, but of course if the Quinn makes a mistake, if he E's you for fun, for a poke, you can really heavily punish with your E, but in general this matchup I would say is more of a neutralizer, where it's really hard for her to survive ganks, so you mainly play for that, staying high HP, and once you have Triforce you can play more aggressive, but of course if she's making mistakes, you can be looking, especially if the wave is on your side of the lane, you can look for those really quick E's, double tap E on the wall to get her off guard so she can't react with her E, or maybe E from bush, stuff like that. But in general, I'd say if the Quinn is really on top of it, she'd be Eing every attempt that you have to E her, so you mainly just play for gank. So you'll E onto her, she'll kick your head off, and then you have Flash to follow. You can Flash ulti her, or maybe even you E Flash if you E towards her, and you flash so that you buffer the E so it still hits her before she has time to react. It makes it a bit faster. Then, of course, waiting for the E to fully connect to her. Really depends on the situation. But in most cases, you're going to be playing mainly for gank setup and staying high HP in this matchup, unless the Quinn makes a lot of mistakes. Our next matchup is Udyr. Now the problem with this lane, and the reason why it's not in the skill matchup section, is if you were to verse a tank Udyr every game, it probably would be. It'd be fine. You can even take first strike in that lane and just farm. But if you're up against a full AD Udyr, that can actually be a bit of a different story. It's quite scary. He does quite a lot of damage. He's going to get constant mid-game prio against you. So what I recommend getting into this lane is to take Conqueror, because it's hard to take short trades against him. It's most likely going to be a tank Udyr, don't get me wrong, but it's still hard to take short trades. You walk up and proc Grasp. He's going to use Awakened Phoenix and get the better end of that short trade. It's better to take Conqueror and go for more so extended trades at your Triforce spike. You can just farm it out until Triforce, and once you have it, you actually have significant damage against him if you have Conqueror. But for the early lane, quite hard. He's a bit of a meatball. He's probably going to push you on the tower. He's probably going to proxy. So you just mainly need to play for getting high CS. You should have a lot of focus in this matchup at getting as much CS as possible over trading on him. Because every time you W him, you're going to block it with W. There's not a lot you can do in this matchup to get significant damage against him pre-Triforce. So I mainly recommend playing more so for farm, trying to get as much CS as possible. You can even go Tiamat in this lane and try to keep him stuck under tower and roam around if you can get prio. But most of the time this lane is going to be him getting pushed, you under tower, and you just farming it out and scaling it into later points of the game. Our next matchup is Tryndamere, and in this lane you want to be taking Grasp and playing for very short trades, playing around your passive cooldown with a lot of intention, taking bone plating, and making sure he can't get an extended all in. So if the wave is on his side of the lane and he's high HP, make sure you don't just E onto him. He's going to pop Ghost and chase you down the lane and beat your head in. So if the wave is on your side, you can take short trades with E, but make sure you finish the trade quickly. You don't want to E onto him and sit there for a few seconds trying to auto attack him down because he's going to retrade onto you. Finish your trade in the CC from your E. Your minion double tap E really quickly, Q2, step back, and make sure he can't retrade onto you and chase you down, or he's going to beat you to death and in some cases even tower dive you. Now in this matchup, it's really important to be kiting him around. You really want to be weaving in and out. Try not to give him an extended situation, especially in the mid-game side fights. So for this purpose, you can take TP Exhaust if you like, and help slow him down, lower his DPS. It can be quite good type of matchup, but if you're not feeling confident on that, you can just run Ignite or Flash, whatever you're used to, but Exhaust can give you some benefit in this lane. Next up, we have Volibear, and Volley is basically a neutralizer for Camille. It's very easy for him to maintain Prior in this lane, keep you stuck under the tower. What I recommend for this one is run TP and Ignite and run Grasp, and mainly play around short trades, so never give him the opportunity to get 2 stacks of W onto you, and make sure you finish your trade in CC. Now what I mean by that is, for example, if the minions are on your side of the lane, because he's going to be pushing with his passive, make sure you Q a minion, double tap on the wall with your E, and then kick him in the head with Q2, and finish the trade straight away. Step back, use W if you want, but don't give him the opportunity to retrade onto you with QEW. The trade is going to be too devastating, because you're going to get a physical damage shield, or maybe you even get a magic damage shield, right? He does mixed damage. Really hard for you to block his whole burst, even with your passive, so it's quite annoying for you if you let him do so. So make sure you finish your trade in your CC. If he walks near you, you use your E. It can be dicey when it's on his side of the map, but as long as you finish the trade in CC, make it really hard for him to catch up to you, you should be fine in most situations. Now once you have Triforce, then you're going to do significant damage against him. But granted, it is a lot harder now with the new Volibear build, don't get me wrong, but that's still what you want to be doing. Weaving in and out, taking short trades, never giving him 2 stacks of W, and it is quite annoying. That's why it's Volibear favored, but that's the best way to play it. Our next matchup is Yone, and for this lane, I strongly recommend taking Conqueror with Ignite. You really need to have the ability to fight him back in an extended situation, because it's very difficult to take short trades against this champion. If you try to proc Grasp onto him, he can chase you down. Lethal tempo, Q3, E, his ulti, everything in his kit can lead to him chasing you down, and it's very hard to take a short trade. Even the Q a minion, E his head, Q2, he can dodge that with his initial E, and then chase you down the lane. So you really need to have Conqueror to have the ability to fight him back as he's chasing you down. You can kite backwards, auto Q, step back, and if he keeps chasing you, he's going to tank an auto Q too. So it can be harder for him up against a Conqueror Camille to chase you down, and once you have the wave on your side of the lane, you're going to have a situation where you can double tap E before he reacts with E if you're good enough, if he's making a mistake, and try to get a meaningful trade down onto him. Now with your ulti, you do need to be careful. If he uses E and you ult him and he presses E whenever he wants, he's just going to snap back and he's going to be chilling. But you can actually time it with Camille. If you use your ulti just as the E expires or just when he flies back, you will follow him back. So you have to time it perfectly. It's quite difficult to do unless you see the bar about to time out. Keep that in mind, and also you can easily buffer your E through his Q3 or his ulti. So if he's just about to hit a Q3 onto you, you can throw out your E as he's flying towards you, and it's going to pull you to safety. There's a lot of skill in this matchup. It's actually quite a fun one. I would just say it's Yone favored because he's going to get Prior for the majority of the lane, and that champion of course scales quite well as well. Our next matchup is Mordekaiser, and for this lane, I strongly recommend taking Conqueror and TP Flash. Now, the reason you take Conqueror over Grasp, it's very hard to take short trades against this champion. As soon as he hits level 6, he can just ulti you, so Conqueror actually gives you significant ability to fight back. You also want Conqueror, so you have all-in threat pre-6, because you can win this lane, you can get push early, you can win trades, levels 1 to 3, play off the bounce back, and try to punish him when the wave's outside your tower. And it's important you try to get an advantage with that 1v1 or 2v1 playing for a gank against him in the early points of the lane before he ticks level 6. Because once he's level 6, it's going to be completely in his favor up until Triforce. Now you take Flash, so you have the ability to dodge his Q. So if you can use your ulti to dodge his Q, or your ulti to dodge his E, and your Flash to dodge Q, just dodge all of his abilities with yours, you can actually kite out his ulti and play it so that you can win the situation. You can kite him around the ulti with your E, your Flash ulti, dodging his spells. You're going to be able to win in the long run, because once the ulti expires, you can just weave in and out with your E's, trying to abuse your movement speed, which is why I'd recommend Swiftness boots in this matchup as well. But if it's worst comes to worst, you can always go a QSS at later points in the game. If in a game where maybe you beat the Mordekaiser and he just keeps ulting you in a team fight, it's annoying. You can pick up the QSS, but you don't really need it. With Triforce, Swifty Boots, and Flash, it's almost impossible for him to kill you if you play well enough. For our next matchup, we have Aatrox, and I've played this matchup so many times this season, and I've come to the conclusion that Conqueror is better than Grasp. They both have their strengths and weaknesses, don't get me wrong, but I feel like without Conqueror, you don't have enough meaningful damage, especially at 6, to take him out. So I recommend taking Conqueror, taking Ignite, and playing very aggressive levels 1 through 3, because Aatrox's Q quite weak in early levels, so you really want to be playing to bait out his spells. Now, you don't want to bait out his spells and click back, you want to bait out his Q and click forward and dodge it and close that gap, because with passive blocking all of his damage, especially if you're only getting hit by the inner ring of Q2, you can start Q and get a very significant trade against him. You're going to get Pro most likely, which you can use to skill E level 2, E onto him, and just really look to punish him at the early points of the lane. Because if you can get to level 5 and you don't have an advantage, your life's going to be very tough up until Triforce. Now, the reason I have this in the Aatrox favored lane, even though in the past it was Camille favored, is especially with lethality Aatrox, this matchup feels quite difficult. He does so much damage to you, he has a lot of threat, and the really good Aatroxes can get a big lead in this lane. But if you can win the early lane and then get to Triforce unscathed, you're going to be fine. Just keep in mind, even if you got a 10-15 CS early, maybe even a kill, he's still going to be stronger than you, level 6 to 7, depending on how good the Aatrox player is, so you still need to play kind of reserved up until Triforce, and keep in mind it's very easy for, I wouldn't say easy, but it's very possible for him to cancel your E with his Q, so you need to be timing your E very well around that. Also, making sure you desperately use your ulti to dodge his Q3 in a lot of situations, and timing your E with his W. If you know you're going to get pulled in by his W, make sure you buffer it. Throw out your E, so at the last second as you're going to get pulled in, you can E away and buffer the CC. Don't just throw out your E when you're in the W, and worst case scenario, you're going to get pulled back to the W in the end. You really need to work on the timing on buffering the spell, and utilizing your ulti to dodge his Q3. Our next matchup is going to be Teemo, and for this lane, I recommend taking Fleet Footwork, Doran Shield, and Second Wind, and playing purely for sustain. Now, you can try to hit every single W on him, and having Fleet Footwork helps. You can Q a minion, walk towards him with W, but don't go for that Q2 as he's just going to blind you. Now, for this lane, you can take Flash or Ignite. I personally prefer Flash because when you're Eing onto him at a key situation, he might flash away, and then you can use Flash to follow, so it gives you a bit more extra range to hit your E onto him. But you can take Ignite if you prefer. A lot of that's personal preference. I just feel like Flash is a bit better. But just make sure you get an early sweeper. When he's level 6, level 7, make sure you're picking up a pink and a sweeper so you can sweep out a stream so you don't have to run into them. Now, if you can get to Triforce without getting behind in this lane, that is a great win. But keep in mind, he's very, very vulnerable to ganks. So you can utilize your jungler as a tool to get yourself fed and shut this guy down early. Our next matchup, we have Briar, and I've played this matchup quite a few times, and I recommend taking Conqueror with Bone Plating and Ignite. Now, you're quite stronger than him, levels 1 through 3, take Doran's Blade as well, and try to really lay on the hurt. Now, keep in mind, a lot of people rely on their E to dodge your E, but make sure you try to dodge her E, the shout thing that pushes you back with your Q movement speed. If you can avoid that spell with Q1, then you're going to be in a great position to kick her head at the end of it with Q2 and get significant damage down onto her. Now, keep in mind, in this lane, especially at later points of the game, she is going to be a bit stronger than you. After 1 to 3, she starts to get stronger and stronger, and even at Eclipse, she's quite a menace. She does quite a lot of damage, especially if she has Ignite. You do have to play around that. And it's very, very easy for her to cancel your E with her stun. The point-click spell that's instant, anyone can do it, so you have to keep that in mind. You either need to be doing a quick E next to the wall, or you need to be Eing after she's already utilized her stun. Very hard to buffer that spell, as it's so instant and point-click. Very hard to react to it with your E, so it's better to hold on to it until she's already stunned you, or do a very fast one. Our next matchup is going to be Irelia, and for this lane, I strongly recommend taking Conqueror with Bone Plating and Ignite, and making sure you try to punish her really hard level 1 if she's misplaying. Now, the way she needs to play it is if she's going to be queuing onto the minions, she has to approach when they're low HP, so you need to find her before the minions get to that point. Try to find her, check bushes, zone her between the towers if you can, and utilize your passive with Q start and Conqueror. You can win a trade against her really hard level 1 if she can't stack up her Q. But if she plays it quite well and manages to avoid you, get her Q stacks, just let her push, it's fine, and try to either buffer her E with your E to get away if you can, or just dodge it with the Q movement speed. Now for this lane, once it's by your side of the tower, it's very easy to punish her. Double tap E, and use your auto attack Q, of course, and utilize her movement speed to dodge her E that's going to be coming out. Now she's going to be looking to ult you at some point, but I don't recommend using your ulti to dodge your ult. That's great, of course, if you can, but dodging her E with your ulti is more important. If you can dodge both, if you're feeling really good, dodge your ulti with your ulti, dodge your E with your Q, you're just the king. But most of the time it's more reliable to dodge your E with your ulti and just tank your ulti to the head and E away if you need to. Up next we've got Gangplank. Now for this matchup I do recommend taking Conqueror with Second Wind and Doran Shield and playing for early Prior. Need to be getting push and playing off that bounce back, trying to punish them early, and you can take Flash or Ignite, it's personal preference. I would say it depends on the other champs in the game. but you really want to be playing off that first bounce back, getting your jungler involved if you can, and looking for an extended trade with your Conqueror. You can beat this champion in the early lane, but if he gets to level 4, level 5 with Sheen, it's going to be a tough time for you until Triforce, and especially he's going to get his Essence Reaver before you most likely, so that can be quite tough. But keep in mind his champion is very vulnerable to ganks. Just make sure you try to dodge his barrels with your ulti if you can, or utilize an auto attack reset auto Q to kill the barrels. For our next matchup, we have Kled, and for this lane, I recommend taking Conqueror and actually taking Cut Down, because Kled's horse gives him a lot of bonus HP, but I don't recommend starting Longsword. That was a thing you could do in the past, you could start Longsword so your HP is lower to get more value from Cut Down, but now Doran's Blade is just too powerful, you should go D-Blade in this lane with Cut Down, Conqueror, and Bone Plating, and look to punish him. You can win early trades against him, try to bait out his spells though. Pretend you're going to walk towards him, go for a farm, bait him to use his Q, and then you can really heavily trade onto him when those spells are on cooldown. But keep in mind this champion can be quite scary if you go for an E onto him when he's on his horse, so try to take short trades with your W and Q, or if his Q's on cooldown, feel free to use your E, but this matchup's all about baiting spells and trying to punish him at a timer when his Q is on cooldown. Now when he's in his horse, when you knock him off his horse, you got to be disengaging him most of the time, run away and wait for your next set of cooldowns, but there's a thing you can do where if you're fighting him, let's say in your ulti and he's on his horse, you can wait for your Q2. You don't have to kick him when he's on his horse. Auto attack him down, maybe use Ravenous Hydra active, get him off the horse, and then use the Q2 when he's in his mini form. It's going to give you a lot higher chance to burst him before he remounts. For our next matchup, we have Kennen, and I recommend in this one taking Fleet Bulwark, Doran Shield, and Second Wind. This is one of those rare matchups where it is okay to delay your Triforce for Merc Treads if they have other AP threats around. If they have an AP jungle especially, Merc Treads can be good. Most of the time, if you can just rush your Triforce, that is fine. Now, for this lane, keep in mind a good Kennen will dodge your W with his E, but that is okay. If you W and he uses E, that means he is vulnerable to being E'd by you while his E is on cooldown. Now, of course, you want to be baiting him to use Q. Walk towards him, walk to creeps, bait him to use Q and dodge it, or use your creeps to block it. But keep in mind you're fine to sustain in this lane with Doran Shield and Fleet, Second Wind, stay high HP, and look to play off a jungle gank. Now, you can actually take TP Flash or TP Exhaust. It's personal preference. I'd say Exhaust can be quite good, especially in games where you don't need Flash that much. Maybe the rest of their team comp not that long range, but I'd say it's personal preference. If you want to take Exhaust and play a bit more aggressive, that's fine. Or if you want to play more so for scaling with Flash, that's also okay. Next up, we have Olaf. Now, for this lane, I do recommend taking Conqueror, because it can be very difficult for you to burst him when he's low HP, especially if he uses his W quite well. But if you have Conqueror and Ignite, you actually have the ability to do so. However, you should still start Doran Shield in this matchup, as he does have quite a lot of poke, spamming axes onto you, and you have to be very respectful level 1. You can take an initial trade if you take over the bush and he face checks you with your passive, but he is going to be running you down, but that's fine. If he does a rundown trade through your passive, you're going to trade HP, but the wave will turn onto him. That means the wave's going to come towards you, and when it's on your side of the lane, very good for you to take E's onto him. Just keep in mind when he's got ulti, when he's got Ragnarok, you can't really E onto him, he can just R and block it and beat you up. It's better to trade with your W's and Q's and E away from his ulti and try to cut it out. So Swiftness boots are really important for this matchup, but I wouldn't delay your Triforce for it. You go Triforce and Swifties, and then it's going to be so much easier for you to kite him around and space out his ulti. And even though Olaf's ulti does block crowd control, it doesn't stop Camille's ulti. So it's very easy to play for ganks in this matchup, because if you think about Olaf without his ulti, very immobile champion, very easy to gank, and your ulti can lock him down, and Ignite's going to really help to stop him from being able to 1v2 that. For our next matchup, we have Gnar, and I strongly recommend taking Conqueror in this lane with Second Wind and Doran Shield, and allowing him to push early, trying to poke him down with W's, letting him push. We did show this matchup in the laning section of the guide, so that's a good reference, but mainly you really want the wave on your side of the lane, so you can take quick E's, because his E is really hard to react to a really fast Camille E, unless the Gnar is very experienced, and if you can cancel his E with your E, it's just game over. You can chase him down, granted you have Conqueror. If you have Grasp and that happens, you can't really capitalize on the opportunity as well, why I strongly love Conqueror, but also at later points of the game. If you have Grasp, and let's say you're Triforce Hydra, and he's Triforce by Cleaver, he's probably going to beat you, but if you have Conqueror, you have significant ability to outplay him. Now, keep in mind, it's very easy to buffer spells, buffer Gnar W and Gnar ulti with your E to avoid that, and also to dodge his W with your ulti. Keep that in mind, but you don't always need to rely on that. If you can dodge his W with your Q movement speed, that's great as well. And a lot of the times you can predict when he's going to use his Gnar ulti when he's about to switch form, so if you can dodge that with ulti, then that's just even better. For our next matchup, we have Akshan, and for this lane, you can go one of two ways. You can take Fleet if you're uncomfortable, take Fleet with Doran Shield Second Wind, or you can take Conqueror, Ignite, and play very aggressive. Now, I do recommend the latter option if you have a lot of confidence, because Akshan, he's not that strong, I would say, in an all-in situation. He really wants to be playing 100 to 0 trade style, trying to poke you down under tower, but if you just go onto him with Conquer and Ignite, there's a lot of threat for you to beat him up. Now, keep in mind with the way his E works, if you can E and hit him while he's spinning, you're going to completely stop him. So if you both E the wall and you fly towards him, most of the time, you're going to be able to easily stop him. Or if you ulti him, it's just going to pull him back in once he spins out of it. So quite an easy matchup, I'd say, but it is still a skill matchup because especially the early lane can be quite difficult. Maybe he takes Ignite Flash and he tries to zone you from creeps. Keep that in mind, you can just weather the storm with Darn Shield's second win, and even play for ganks at later points of the lane, but once you have ulti, Sheen, a couple swords, going to be quite easy for you to punish this champion with your Conqueror. Our next matchup is going to be Azir. Normally I wouldn't really put this champion in there, but it is growing in popularity recently in the top lane, and I did play this matchup a couple times. Now what I recommend is taking Fleet with Doran Shield and Second Wind. You don't really need Conqueror. Azir is very squishy control mage. You can all in him, you're going to have significant damage without it, and you're going to be trying to get to Triforce as fast as possible. You can play for ganks, don't get me wrong, but it's really hard to kill this champion if he's respecting well. If he's spacing from the walls, and a good distance is quite hard. Just utilize your W, Q a minion with Fleet, get the extra movement speed, hit your W onto him, go for a Q2, and he might spin away, he might fly away, that's fine, but you mainly want to be trying to stay as high HP as possible, and if you can, when you E onto him, he's going to try to ult you straight away in most situations. So if you can predict that he's going to use his ulti and dodge it with your ult, that's going to be great for you, you're going to be in such a good spot, but maybe a paired Azir won't react, it really depends on the level of play. The Azir that you're versing is, so most of the time you can figure it out. By the time they're 6, if you're onto them, they're either going to ult you or they're not. If they ult you straight away, that's most likely going to be their pattern. So I versed in Azir one trick in this match multiple times. The first time I versed him, that's what I did. I E'd him, he ulted me to tower. I still live, but I figured it out. Alright, he's going to probably do that every time, and then I started predicting his ulti with my ult, and I was able to dodge it consistently. For our next matchup, we have Cassante. Now you can go the Grasp or the Conqueror route in this matchup, both are good. I would say, if you're up against a high elo Cassante player, Grasp is probably going to be better, and if you're in a lower elo bracket, then Conqueror is going to be better. Now with Grasp, you want to be prioritizing short trades, but level 1 you can take an extended one. So I did verse a Cassante in the full game review, so you can always watch that, but you can play very aggressive with Q start level 1 even if you have Grasp. Try to really hard punish him levels 1 through 3, but of course at level 6 onwards he has a lot of threat against you. Quite a scary matchup at that point, so you want to be playing more so for your Triforce if you don't get a lead before that happens. Now, once you have Triforce, I actually strongly vouch for building Swiftness boots in this matchup, because Cassante of course is Q slow, but mostly when he builds Iceborne Gauntlet. If the Cassante builds Frozen Heart, you don't need to, but a Cassante with Iceborne, if you have Swifties and Triforce, makes it way easier for you to kite him around, weave in and out with your spells, get true damage Qs onto him, get good chunks, and now the way Cassante's W works, he can't do the mini W, makes the matchup 10 times easier. So if you E onto him and kick his head with Q2, he starts channeling W, you can abuse that movement speed to run away, and he's not going to be able to stun you. And if he does, let's say it's before the point where you have Swifties and Triforce, or you play it badly, and he's able to stun you, just make sure you dodge his W with your ulti. It's the main spell you want to be dodging, or you can even dodge a Q3 as well. It really just depends, and you can also buffer both of those spells with your E as well. Just something you need to keep in mind is if you're trying to run away from a Cassante, let's say the wave is on his side of the lane, and you try to run to yours and E, he can so easily cancel your E with his ulti. He can just ulti, pull you off the wall, and you're probably going to die. So make sure you use your E in a better way. You either flash E, so flash is okay in this matchup, or you can take Ignite, really personal preference. You can flash E, so you can't reach you with ulti, or you need to be trying to space him with the Q movement speed and W, but you shouldn't get to that point to begin with, where he's right in front of your face, especially now because his W is so much harder to use. For our next matchup, we have Sion. Now, you can either go Conqueror or First Strike in this lane. I don't really recommend Grasp, it's not bad by any means. The problem with Grasp is he can block a lot of short trades with his W. I prefer going more so for extended trades with Conqueror, or just farming him for like a piggy bank with your First Strike. Now, this lane is very easy to get an early game advantage over, because especially with Conqueror and D-Shield, you can play very aggressive levels 1 through 3, play off the bounce back and try to punish him when the wave's in front of your tower. Because Sion with just a Doran Shield, very, very squishy, very easy for you to punish, so you should be trying to get an early advantage against his champion. But if you don't, there's actually going to be a point in the lane after his first base around level 7 where he can actually start to poke you out and bully you, which is why you're going to have Doran Shield and Second Wind. That time can be hard, but once you have Triforce, you're going to be back in the driving seat again, of course, unless he's already ahead of you at that point, so it can be quite tough. But keep in mind, the later the game goes, the better it's going to be for you, especially at Triforce and Ravenous Hydra. Granted, you have Conqueror, but if you just want to play for First Dragon farming him, that's fine too. Just make sure you prioritize short trades if you're playing that style. For our next matchup, we have Rengar, and for this lane, I recommend playing very heavily around your passive. take Grasp with Bone Plating, and when he jumps onto you, you can auto QQ, W as you walk away, or you can even E away if he roots you with his bowler, but most of the time you're going to be able to block a lot of his trade with your passive, granted he's not fed if you're not behind, so this matchup's not actually too bad, and at Triforce you really hard outscale him. You should be taking Grasp with Ignite, because Ignite and Triforce you can look to all in him and punish him, and of course, if he makes a mistake, if he's trying to crash the wave in front of you, he's not utilizing the bushes, you can look for a quick E-trade onto him, but you really want to be prioritizing short trades and trading around your passive. For our next matchup, we have Singe. Now, personally, in this lane, I would run First Strike. I'll take First Strike and just farm him for insane amounts of gold, because there's no way he can strike you first. However, that might make you miss out on solo kill opportunities if you're up against a bad Singe player. You can also take Conqueror in this lane and play more so to kill him. Both options are fine, it really depends on your personal preference, but you want to be trying to attack him level 1 to 3 before he gets a proxy position. Don't let him get a huge stack wave and proxy. You want to be playing aggressive. You should probably still start W so that you can hit him with W, because if you run towards him with Q, he can just run around with his Q, make you eat the poison. Not ideal, but the big thing you should know about this matchup is if you try to E and his W is on the wall, you're going to be stuck. You're not going to be able to use E2, you're just going to be awkwardly stuck there, so you need to be Eing at a range where he can't reach with W. And also something you should know about this matchup is Swiftness boots are going to be your best friend, not just for his W, but also for his Ryla. It's really hard to stick on this guy and kite him around without Swifties, but with Triforce and Swifties, you're going to have a significant chance to do so. For our next matchup, we have Shen, and for this lane, I recommend taking Grasp and playing more so for shorter trades. It's quite hard to stack Conquer against him with his Taunt, with his W, so Grasp is going to be a lot easier. And trying to get push and keep him stuck under tower if you can, so this would be a great lane to build Tiamat first, because you don't want to be letting him ult away, and your wave clear is so terrible you can't even reach the tower. So try to get an early Tiamat, try to keep him trapped, and block him from achieving what he wants to do. Now, other than that, in terms of your spell interaction, you can use your ulti to dodge his taunt pretty reliably. You can also use your ulti to cancel his ult. It cancels all channels, so if he's ulting under tower, you don't have to E onto him and get taunted and die. You can cancel with ulti and then E away and have a lot higher chance of survival. You can also buffer his taunt with your E to escape. And also, if he's going to taunt onto you, let's say it's at an early point in the lane, you don't have ulti to dodge it, you can pre-Q, so that when he taunts you, you're going to Q straight away, and it's already going to be stacking your second Q while you're in that taunt duration. Just make sure you don't rush into using your Q2 and letting a blocker with his W. Hold on to it for as long as you can to make his W wasted, and worst case scenario, your Q2 will time out as you're clicking away, but you're not going to completely whiff it in front of his face and allow him to auto you for free. For our next matchup, we have Set, and for this lane, you want to be taking Grasp with Bone Plating and Ignite. Now, it's very important you play for short trades in this lane and trading around your passive. And something you should note is that with your W, the outer ring of the W, you can hit it onto him without being in his E range. So don't W too close towards him, where he's just going to pull you in and beat your head off. He's going to punch you to death. So very important that you space very well on this W. This matchup's all about spacing and making sure you dodge his W with your ulti. Very important, such a big windup, quite easy to do, but a lot of good sets will try to chain those spells together. He'll try to stun you with E and W together, which can be quite annoying, so just make sure you're not giving him the freest EW of his life when you're low HP and standing next to a creep wave. For our next matchup, we have TF, and I'd recommend taking Conqueror over Fleet in this matchup. Even though he does have quite a lot of poke, you can get by it with Doran Shield and Second Wind, and without Conqueror, it can feel very difficult to have meaningful damage to burst him. So if you have Conqueror, you can look to E onto him, and the biggest point about this matchup is one, buffering his stun card with your E to get away, or using your ulti to dodge his stun card. If you can do that, you're going to be in such a great position to beat him down, because his W cooldown is so long, it's going to give you plenty of time to stack your Conqueror in the ulti and just beat him down. For our next matchup, we have Trundle, and for this lane, I recommend taking Grasp with Bone Plating and Ignite. Now, it's very important you play for short trades in this lane and abusing your passive, as it's going to be very hard for him to do meaningful damage against you if you disengage the trade with and utilize your passive well. Now, Ignite is mandatory. Level 6 onwards, you're not going to have the damage to kill him without it, but once you get to the point where you have Triforce and Tier 2s, you can easily kite this champion around, and you can go Tabbies, that is good in most situations, but if you feel like you want Swifty Boots, if it's just Trundle, maybe they've Nidalee Jungles, champs like that, Swifty Boots can be great for kiting him around. You're using the movement speed reduction from his E, the slow reduction, sorry, and utilizing the extra MS to kite him around, just weave in and out with Qs with ease, chunk him down, a couple Q empowered Q auto attacks, but the problem with this champion is eventually he's just going to keep perma pushing side, making you answer. So it can be kind of annoying in the mid game, but the lane is actually not that bad as long as you take short trades and look to burst him when he's low HP. Up next, we have Wukong, and for this lane, I recommend taking Grasp with Doran Shield and Bone Plating, and also taking Ignite. Now, you want to be heavily playing for short trades in this lane, trying to utilize your passive very, very well. If you W him, he's probably going to E towards you, keep that in mind, so be prepared to Q him straight away to get the passive up as fast as possible. Now, something you need to keep in mind, if you're on his side of the lane and you're trying to run away and you try to E max range to your side, he can very easily cancel that with his ulti. You need to hold on to it until he just uses his ulti, the first spin, so that you can E before the second spin is up, or you need to be trying to buffer his ulti with your E by trying to predict it. It really depends on the situation, but just it's really important not to let your E get cancelled by his ulti, or he's going to be able to chase you down with Conqueror and beat you down. For our next matchup, we have Vladimir. For this matchup, I actually recommend taking Conqueror with Doran Shield and second win. You don't really need Fleet. His damage early is quite low. You don't really need the extra sustain. It's better to have the extra damage, taking Conqueror and Ignite together, and having enough meaningful threat to burst him. Now, he's quite weak early game. You really want to be crashing wave 3, playing for Prio, crash wave 3, punish him when you're getting a level up advantage, and then allowing the wave to come back towards you and trying to kill him on that timer. Level 4, with the wave frozen outside your tower, is the prime time to take him down, especially if you can get your jungler involved. That's going to be great to kill him. Now, if you can't get a lead on him early game, it's going to be a timer, around level 7 onwards, where he's stronger than you, but once you have Triforce, that's going to flip back in your favor, and you can look to punish him yet again. Moving on to Zac, and for this lane, I recommend taking Conqueror with Ignite. If you try to take short trades with Grasp, you're not going to have any meaningful damage to burst him. Now, this lane is fine if it goes even for you, because you're going to be outscaling him at later points in the game, but you are much stronger than a 1-3, so you should look to abuse that timer. Keep in mind, even if the game goes even, you can have Triforce or Ravenous Hydra and really dominate him in the side lane, keep him stuck, you're going to be fine, so don't rush into punishing him too hard if he's not making any major mistakes. Now, in terms of the spell interaction, if he's trying to E onto you, you can either buffer that with your E, and you're still going to have time to E2 onto him, granted that you E far enough away, and you can utilize that extra damage, or you can also use your ulti to dodge it, that's fine too. Just try to use your Q, dodge his Q. Use the Q movement speed to dodge his Q, but if he's a good Zac, Q's a minion, punches you, pulls you in, not much you can do about that. Just make sure you're not tanking the full E without buffering it with E, or dodging it with ulti. For our next matchup, we have Tahm Kench, and I recommend taking either Grasp or First Strike in this lane. First Strike's quite risky, only do that if you're feeling very confident. Now, you should take Grasp and keep in mind Tahm is more of a neutralizer. If Tahm does not get fed in laning phase, he is a completely useless champ. Keep that in mind, if you can get to Triforce unscathed, you're going to be fine. Mainly focus around taking short trades with your Grasp, staying high HP, and playing more so for ganks. It's going to be very hard for you to solo kill this champ if he's not doing anything stupid. If you're not playing ridiculously bad, it's going to be hard for you to do that. So if you get to your item and you're even with him, his champ is going to fall off a lot harder and your champ's going to keep getting stronger and stronger. Also in this matchup, you either want to be buffering his Q3 when it's about to stun you, so a Q when you have 3 stacks on you, or his W. You want to be buffering that with your E so you can escape and not allow him to trade onto you and get extra auto attacks. Now, something you do need to keep in mind, if for whatever reason you let the trade go on too long and he has 3 stacks, he can easily cancel your E away with his ulti, so you should never let it get to that point. For our next matchup, we have Warwick, and for this lane, you can go one of 2 routes. You can either take Conqueror with Ignite and play very aggressive, or you can take First Strike and mainly play as Farmer for gold, but regardless, you should be taking Ignite, as Warwick has too much healing. Now, keep in mind Warwick's another champion where if he doesn't get fed in laning phase, he's just completely useless, he's a bit of a shit stain, so it's fine for you to play more reserved and play for staying high HP, taking smart trades, and just getting your Triforce unscathed, because a lot of situations I see people run into, they try to kill the Warwick and he just heals it all back, gets the kill, and then you have to play against a Warwick that's got a Bork Rush, whatever it may be. It's going to be very hard for you to play into that situation. So try to get to your Triforce unscathed, take very short trades against him, just get his HP bar lower and lower, and play more so for ganks and utilizing your Ignite so he can't turn the gank around. Moving on to the Camille favored matchup, starting with Kayle. Now, Kayle is a champion that's very weak in the early lane. You really want to be punishing him, levels 1 through 5, and I do recommend taking Conqueror in this lane to help you do so. Having all-in threat against him is going to be very helpful, and try to punish him level 1. Try to get onto him with a Q start, try to get E level 2, play very aggressive against his champion, crash wave 3, allow the wave to come back towards you, and look to all-in him. Now, you should take Flash in this matchup, you don't really need Ignite. Flash is better, you can use it to follow him, E-Flash his Flash, stuff like that, but you really want to be getting behind pre-6, because if he gets to level 6 with tier 2 boots and he's not behind, the matchup is actually going to be in his favor, so it's really important for you to do so, but even if that happens, even if he gets to the point where he's stronger, at Triforce you're going to be stronger again, so this matchup is quite solidly in your favor, granted you don't throw it away trying too hard to kill this guy. For our next matchup, we have Malphite, and I do recommend taking Grasp in this lane. It's hard to farm First Strike against him, he'll just pop Q with it, and it's hard to stack Conqueror because his E just makes you unable to auto-attack, so Grasp is great, and also you should be taking Demolish. You want to be either getting an early advantage against this champion by crashing wave 3, allowing the waves to come back towards you, and playing for a gank or for a solo kill, or you want to be looking to use your insane power to roam around. So if the mid matchup is very volatile, you can rush Tiamat as your first item and just perma push and roam, attack jungle, attack mid, and try to spread your influence around the rest of the map. But ideally, if there's nothing going on mid, you look to get ahead of the champion pre-6, and if there's nothing your roams can do, you look to build big waves together, proc demolish on them in front of the tower, try to get tower plates. So you have a lot of options in this matchup. Just keep in mind at 6 he's going to be looking to play up for a gank, try to ult you. You can either dodge his ulti with your ulti if you're feeling good, or just buffer it with your E. For our next matchup, we have Ornn, and you can either run Grasp or First Strike depending on how you're feeling. If you want to be playing more so for lane domination, Grasp is great, but First Strike can give you a lot of early gold, a lot of free money, you can just scale off him. That's going to be fine too. And you can either go for a straight Triforce rush with your Grasp and try to punish him, or you can feel free to rush Tiamat in this matchup as well, try to just push waves, keep him stuck under tower, and roam around. This matchup's not super easy. I would say it's in Camille's favor, but you need to be very aware. You need to be baiting his spells, trying to dodge his Q, abusing your movement speed from Q to dodge his if you can, either trying to buffer his ulti or his E with your E. And it's really important when you go for an all-in, you dodge his ulti with your ulti if you can. That's going to be very important, very vital part of this matchup, and if you can't do that, you're probably going to struggle. For our next matchup, we have Urgot, and for this lane, I recommend taking Conqueror with Ignite. You need to have all-in threat against him, but you do need to take Doran Shield in second win to regen his poke, because of course he's a ranged champion, but this champion is not only very easy to set up ganks against, he's very easy to kill with a jungle gank. It's very easy to dodge his main spell. Urgot relies on hitting his E in a lot of situations, but you can either buffer your E with that and run away, or you can dodge it with your ulti, so it's very hard for him to hit that spell against you. Now you should only be trading with your passive against him if you can, and if you W towards him, he might try to flip you, so make sure you're really on your toes. We're trying to space out this champion, but if you can get to Triforce and you're either even or slightly ahead, you're going to have a great time. Very easy to trade onto him with E and space around, granted you're really confident at dodging his E with your ulti. For our next matchup, we have Cho'Gath, and you can run either Grasp or Conqueror. I'd say it's more personal preference in this lane. Granted, you have second win and Doran Shield, you're going to be fine. Now you want to be playing to punish this champion in the early game, when Cho'Gath's still on Doran Shield or maybe Doran's Ring, depending on who you're up against. He's quite vulnerable to being ganked, to being punished. You want to be playing for ganks, playing for punish in the early stages of the lane. But if he gets by, if he gets his first base off, gets some tank items, it can be in his favor for a little bit, but once you have Triforce, it's going to be back into your favor. And it's important that you utilize your Q movement speed very heavily in this matchup to dodge his Q, or you can dodge it with ulti or buffer it with E. You have a lot of outplay potential in this matchup, and of course his champion very immobile, very easy to set up ganks against, so it's really hard for him to survive in this lane. For our next matchup, we have Nasus, and I recommend taking Grasp in this lane and playing more so for short trades. Now it's important that you get ahead of this champion before level 6, trying to get push, poke him down, start Q against him, take a very extended trade level 1, get Prio, allow for the wave to bounce back after crashing wave 3, and punish him on that sweet spot when the wave's frozen outside your tower, you're both level 4, you can look to all in him with Ignite. Now if he gets to 6 and that hasn't happened, maybe he's even, you just need to farm it out to a Triforce, and Swifty boots are going to be your best friend in this matchup. Because you really want to be cutting him in and out with your Q2, kicking his head off with, E, Q2, running away, coming back with your next set of spells. But without Swifties, he's just going to wither you. It's going to be very hard for you to do so. But once you have Triforce and Swifties, it's going to be quite easy. Our next matchup is going to be Maokai, and for this lane, you're going to be wanting to take Grasp and taking short trades against him and trying to bully him early game. Now you can take Ignite as well, and this is a matchup where you can delay your Triforce for Merc trades. If you have Sheen Merc trades, very hard for him to trade against you, especially if they have an AP jungler. Now he does have a lot of gank setup, and you can buffer his W with your E, but he can cancel your E with his Q, so if you're Eing really far away, keep that in mind, it can be quite dangerous. Now, this lane is in your favor, because you're just going to keep outscaling him throughout the entire game. You're always going to get side lane power against him, but because he has a lot of gank setup, keep that in mind in the early game, it can be quite difficult. I do recommend going Tiamat first in this lane, and just basically ignoring the lane. Trying to just push him, keep him stuck under tower, roam around, attack jungle, attack mid, because if you're just stuck in lane trying to play for an advantage against Maokai, not only is it not going to be that impactful, because he's still going to be Maokai, still going to be a tank, you're also going to be open to getting ganked. Next up we have Yasuo, and in this lane you're going to be wanting to take Conqueror with Ignite, and you quite heavily win trades on this lane, as granted you can hit your E. Now he's going to be either trying to win wall your E, the E1, which can be something you need to watch out for, or he's going to be trying to dodge it with dashing around the minions. You're going to have to be doing quick E's in this matchup to take him down. But with your passive and quick Q trades, you can easily win this matchup. He's very easy to gank. I'd say this matchup is heavily in your favor. Just make sure he doesn't cancel your E with his knock-up or with his W, anything like that. And you can also look to buffer his Q3 with your E if you need to. But if you try to buffer his Q3 and he away, he can ulti after to cancel your E. Keep that in mind. But most of the time, you just want to be taking aggressive trades onto him with your E and trying to dodge his Q3 with your movement speed from Q. Moving on to Swain, and even though he is a ranged champion that has a lot of poke, you still want Conqueror in this lane, because without it, you're not really going to have enough all-in damage to take him out. And you want to be taking Ignite, of course, to cut his healing, but this champion is quite vulnerable pre-6, very easy for you to aggressively trade onto, and even playing for ganks, very easy to set up ganks against him, and if you have Ignite, very low chance he can tank you out and survive these ganks, and you can also dodge his E with your ulti. So I'll say this matchup's quite heavily in your favor. Just make sure you go Darn Shield second win, regen his poke, and look for aggressive trades with your E when he's near terrain. Moving on to Garen, and we did have an example of this in the laning phase section, but I do recommend taking Conqueror and Doran's Blade in this matchup, and playing very aggressive level 1 start Q, try to beat him up, take very extended trades, play for Pro, and then play off the bounce back. Very important to shut down this champion at the early stages of the game, because Garen scales extremely well. But even if you fail to do so, your champion scales well as well. At Triforce, you can beat him as long as you kite him around. You don't just sit in the spin, of course. You take a quick trade with EQ2, kite him around, re-engage when his spells are on cooldown. You don't want to just be running him down, of course. You can do that levels 1 to 3, but it can be hard for the rest of the lane. You want to be being tricky with it and kiting him around and abusing your cooldowns, abusing your passive, and not letting him get his full combo on you for free. Our next matchup is going to be Dr. Mundo, and in this matchup you want to be taking Conqueror and definitely take Ignite. Now you can beat him 1 to 3, you outscale him very heavily. You do need to watch out. If you don't get an early game advantage, there will be a point in the lane where he can push you in, but that's fine. You just scale up to a Triforce and you're going to have a lot of all-in threat against this champion. Now keep in mind, if you hit an E onto him, is going to pop his passive and you're not going to get the knock-up effect, but you will still get the bonus attack speed, which is great, and your E cooldown is a lot shorter than his passive, so you can look to re-engage with him with E. And also, after you hit the E onto him, and he pops his little potion off that he wants to pick up to heal, you can abuse your Q movement speed to walk over it and deny him that heal. Now, you can use your ulti to dodge a cleaver when you're running towards him. That's a small little trick you can do, but this matchup's pretty straightforward. You have a lot of all-in threat against him. You want to be abusing him, especially when he's near walls, and looking to shut him down at the early stages of the game. And for our final matchup, we have Shyvana, and in this lane, she is quite weak early game, so you want to be taking Conqueror with Doran's Blade, take Ignite, and you want to be playing for a 3-wave crash. Now once the wave's under its out, you want to be allowing it to bounce back, and you can either base, TP back to lane, grab an extra longsword, and then be strong enough so that you can trim the wave, or you can stay. Maybe you're full HP, full mana, you're feeling confident, but you want to be trimming the wave, poking her down as the wave comes in, and once the wave is on your side of the lane, you can look to punish her. And even at later points of the lane, when she has Dragon, you can look to E onto her, play for a gank, play for 1v1, and follow her ulti when she ults away with your ulti. It's quite hard for her to play into this matchup, especially if you can punish her in the early game. So that's it for the specific matchups, but one more thing I want to say is make sure you don't just follow these blindly to the T, because your level of play and the level of play of your opponent will vastly dictate how the matchup is actually going to be played out. You might be able to get a huge advantage against a really bad Fiora player or a bad Renekton player, but if you're just following these matchups, playing safe, playing for short trades, you're going to miss out on opportunities. The point of this was to give you a rough outline of how the matchup should look if both players are playing decently well, but of course you want to be looking at what your opponent's doing and trying to punish his mistakes if you can, regardless of the matchup. Up next, we're going to be covering the mid game, and the mid game is probably the biggest thing I see a lot of Camille mains struggle with, because there's just so much to do. You have so many options on this champion, and your role in the game is not quite as black and white as it is on other champions. Where if you're playing a champion like Trundle or Yorick, it's pretty obvious what you want to be doing. You're going to be split pushing and creating pressure and trying to break down towers. And if you're playing a champion like Malphite, you're going to be grouping up and engaging and punishing the enemy. Where on Camille, you have the option to play very selfishly in side lane, create pressure, the option to eat cabs, you have the option to engage on the mid, so it can be lost and it can be very easy for you to be unsure what to do in the game. Now, the easiest way to explain your role in the mid game is to use your side lane power to create pressure to make somebody respond to you, like in this example. I've pushed bottom all the way to tier 2 to make Gwen respond to me. If she didn't answer, I would try to break this tower and play selfishly, but here in this game she answered me, so now I'm going to be looking to fog and attack the rest of her team. Where here, if they respected my roam, and they sat really far back at tower, I would go back to my side lane, push it in, and do the same thing again. And the most common timer that you're going to be attacking people on is going to be on mid waves, when they're trying to contest the mid lane prior, or on neutral objectives. Where here at Singe, he's playing quite a strong champion. Not a strong champ, but a champion that's harder to kill. He's not playing an AD carry, he's not playing Israel or Smolder or something, so I was a bit hesitant to go in. But as soon as he flipped his cannon, I knew it was go time. He went up too far, and I was able to engage on him. And like we talked about before, use my ulti, and I don't want to be walking through his poo and his Q trying to hit him. I just stand on the outskirts of my ulti and let Lucian do the rest, and I was able to pick up a kill. So I made Gwen respond to me, so she couldn't be a part of that skirmish or that team fight, and then I looked to attack the rest of their team and tried to engage on whoever was playing aggressive in the mid lane. The next concept we're going to be covering is pick your moments with discipline. Because your champion has such a long range engage, it can be very tempting to engage on the opponent when you can. But there's a lot of situations, especially in the early game, when you have Triforce Tiamat or Triforce Hydra, you're very squishy. It's easy for you to get blown up in one shot if you try to do so. It's not like you're a Malphite going in, you're still a squishy champion in the early game. You have to be really careful and pick your moments well. Where in this game, I'm the one playing the best on my team. I'm very strong, I broke the first tower. It can be very tempting for me to try to carry, try to engage on mid, try to attack them. I'm still looking for plays constantly, but I'm picking my moments with discipline. So here I push wave all the way in, make Aatrox respond to me, like we talked about before, and I'm looking to attack mid. Mid looks very volatile, there's a lot of action going on, but here they see me on the Jhin trap, and they respect me. They're sitting really far back, so this is not an opportunity. I even look to kill Bod, kill Hui. He respects me as well on this ward, so now I can see my team go kill. And I'm not going to be looking to fight this. I'm going to look to go back to side lane and pick a different moment. Because if I tried to force dive those guys mid when they're low HP, there's a good chance I get killed, give over a shutdown. Or if I committed all the way to the Hui, she probably would have just ran away and I would have wasted my time. So I go back to side. After looking for my initial play, make Aatrox respond to me, and as you can see here, it could be tempting for me to try kill him as well. But he's already 0-3 or something like that. There's no point trying to kill him, and they're trying to punish me. You can see Zyra, Musty is roaming. I'm playing very reserved, even though I'm 3-0 and I should be the one carrying this game. I know my moment will come. The enemies will make a mistake, and I'll look to punish later on. So trying to catch out Zyra there, she respected as well. But the enemy team is playing around my moves quite well. But that doesn't mean an opportunity is not going to present itself. I just need to be patient and pick my timer wisely. So pushing in the wave, trying to make people react to me yet again, same as before. And if they don't respond to me, I'm going to be trying to break this tower. So play very selfishly, but if somebody's responded to you, don't be delusional. You can't just hit the tower in front of them. And here I made people respond to me, but because I know it's must Yi, very easy for me to run away. And the time is still not here yet. They're putting a lot of pressure onto me. As you can see, I got ganked multiple times now in the side. And when I try to go mid, there's no opportunity. And even here, my team's getting killed. It could be tempting to TP into this as well. So a lot of discipline in this game. And I'm not saying I do this every single time, but this is the goal, right? You want to be picking your moments where you engage and kill their backline without making a mistake. So here I made Aatrox respond to me. I based for my item, and I instantly TP'd in because I saw Hui was playing too far up. And as you can see, Master Yi desperately trying to stop me, and I'm able to pick him. Able to kill him, I'm still behind Hui. We take her out as well, and now the game is really snowballed. The game's in a really good spot. Aatrox tries to TP, I'm pretty sure, to answer me, and we're able to take them all out. So now the game is basically in our control completely from that play, where if I tried to overforce mid when they're 1 HP, commit all the way to a Hui roam when he just respects me, or play too aggressive to kill Aatrox top, all of those situations could have led to me either getting picked or wasting a lot of time, getting chunked, and not help me progress the game, where I played with patience, I waited for the right moment, and I was able to snowball the game regardless, even though it was a few minutes later than I would have liked. Another concept that's important for your mid game on Camille is going to be the non-committal deploy. And what I mean by that is I see a lot of Camilles either run straight down mid or run straight down to side, but that's really committing to what you want to do. If you run mid, you're committing to attacking mid. If you run side, you're committing to go inside. But if you deploy through the jungle, you're going to be very flexible. As you can see, I non-commit through the jungle. I even pink up my arrival. Now I can look to attack mid if they play aggressive, and if nothing happens, my team gets mid push off of my fog, and I can look to go back to side, and it will be me going back to side slightly longer than it's possible, but I have the option to attack the enemy team on mid. As you can see here, Israel walks up, I'm able to kill him, and if that wasn't the case, let's say for example he sat really far back, I'd be going to side late, they don't see me going there. Where if you run straight down mid, you might show on the wave, you might show on a lane ward, so they see you, which gives the enemy team a lot of opportunity to make plays on the other side. But if you do a non-committal deploy constantly through the jungle, it's going to make them think every time you're off the map, you're going to be looking to attack them mid, but really you're just seeing there. You're just sniffing around. If there's a play, you're going to go back to side and create pressure, and if not, you can look to attack mid. And this is really good throw prevention macro, I like to call it, because if your team's the one getting attacked mid, and you non-committal deploy, you're going to be there for the fight if it looks good. Another play you have available to you is attacking the same side as your mid laner, because Camille has a great gank, and most of the time, top laner goes one side, mid laner goes the other, but Camille has a great gank, so you can look to base, run straight there out of base, to the side your mid laner is on, and attack the guy that your mid laner is matching. Now, you shouldn't do that if you're versus a strong side laning champion that's creating pressure, you don't want to give the Trundle or a Yorick a tier 2 top tower just for doing this, but it is an option you have in the game. And here, I did change my mind in the moment, I veered off, I wasn't initially thinking about it, but once I saw Hui walk past that ward, I decided to TP and punish him. So you can either TP flank or you can run straight down the lane with a sweeper, try to punish them. But as you can see, the gank setup is so good, really easy to gank these immobile mid laners that try to play aggressive inside and create advantages for not just yourself, but for your mid laner. Up next, we're going to be covering team fighting, and the most important thing by far for team fighting on Camille is weaving in and out of the fight. You don't just want to jump on somebody's head, chase them down, try to beat them to death. You're not playing Olaf, you want to be weaving in and out and abusing your Q2. You want to be getting as many kicks off as you can by weaving in and out with your second Q and your E. Now, most of the time, you want to be stacking your Q before you go in on a ward, on a jungle camp, on a honey fruit, blast cone, doesn't matter. You want to be stacking your Q, then Eing in and disengaging the fight straight after. In some cases, you will keep going, don't get me wrong. It's not black and white, but most of the time, you want to be weaving in and out. As you can see on this example, Q off of the Scuttle Crab, E in, kick this guy's head off, pop W, and kite back. I don't want to be running into all of Talia's spells, getting flicked, getting chunked to 1 HP. I want to be weaving in and out of this fight. So as you can see, good kick, good little poke, and now I'm going to be looking to space them here. I don't want to be going in right now, I don't have anything to stack on, but they play a bit too aggressive, this guy went in, so I went in without my Q, right? He made a mistake, so I was able to punish, and now I'm waiting for my next set of cooldowns. So hopefully this guy leaves me his ward, nice, can stack my Q off the ward, E in, kick this guy's head as well, and as you can see, weaving in and out of the fight successfully, went onto this guy, took him out as well. So if I were to just initially hard engage on that fight, pick the melee and try to run them down, I would have taken so much damage and got chunked, and the fight would have been really hard. But because I was weaving in and out, the fight was a lot easier for us to play out. I got a lot of true damage kicks off in that fight, and the fight was just a lot smoother overall than if I was to just run into them blindly, pretending I'm Olaf. So we have one more example here of this concept, weaving in and out of the fight, but in this one, the fight is not quite so in my team's favor. Now here, as you can see, going over by this scrying bloom so I can use it to stack my Q. I'm going to be doing just that, stacking Q on this bloom and then looking to go in, get the true damage kick, but as you can see, if I ran forward, I'd get completely wiped there, so just kiting back, kicking some heads off, running away, and waiting for my next set of cooldowns. Now Smolder played a bit too aggressive and got hooked. Of course, I'm going to E4 there, get a good trade on 2, finish him off, and now I'm weaving back. I get the kick, I run backwards, waiting for my next set of cooldowns, get passive, click back, come in for the kick. You can see I'm weaving it in back and forth. I'm not just sitting on this guy trying to auto-take him to death. There are games where you do that with Conqueror, don't get me wrong, but most of the time you're going to be weaving in and out, abusing your Q2, even with Conqueror, because unless you're extremely fed, it's hard just to run everyone down, and as you can see, Q off a minion, E off the wall, another kick, so constantly throughout this fight, I've just been weaving in and out, getting consistent true damage kicks off, and as you can see here, same thing again, wait for the Vita Q, go in, another kick, but here he's going for the Thresh, of course I can just chase him down. And then in this situation, even now, when it's a 1v1, and I have a lot of kill threat onto him, I'm not just running him down, as you can see soon. I'll Q off the tower, step back, trying to space him out so he can't get a free shield off me, and then finish him off. So constantly throughout this fight, weaving in and out and looking to punish them with my kicks and my E's. I'm not just running them down. And like I said before, there are games where you do that if you're really fed, if you have Conqueror, but most of the time you are going to be kiting back and forwards and abusing your Q2. Now, the second concept, and if you can execute both of these consistently, you're going to have a lot of success on team fighting on Camille, and that is holding your spells. Where I see a lot of people make the mistake when somebody dives in, they use their E straight away, or their ulti, or they just E ult the backline and get one shot. But you want to be holding these major spells until the opponent makes a positioning mistake, or until they use major cooldowns. Maybe they use their flash, maybe they use their ulti, or they step in the wrong position. You need to be ready to hit them with your E and ulti, because if you just E the frontline, let's say for example as Zinsao goes in, and you E him, the backline is going to have a lot of confidence to walk up and hit you in response. But if you hold on to these spells, you're just stacking your Q on the front line, it's going to be a lot harder for them to play out the fight. So I have an example here of a small skirmish where a Leona and a Lux is in this situation, where if I were to E ulti straight away, I'm going to get CC chained pretty heavily. I'm going to get Leona E, ulti Q'd, Lux Q'd, and just be stuck there forever. But as you can see, I'm clicking back, trying to bait out spells, trying to bait Leona or Lux to use something, and boom, as soon as Lux uses Q, Leona uses E, I go in, I ulti now to push the Leona away before she Qs me, and we're able to pick up a couple kills on the back end of this fight. So it's really important that you hold your spells until the right opportunity, try to bait them with your movement or with your Qs and Ws to use their major cooldowns, or to miss position, and then look to strike later on. And the final thing to keep in mind for team fighting is Camille is one of the best champs in the game at marking flankers. So if you have a strong backline and they're getting a lot of pressure from champions like Talon or Ahri or LeBlanc, champions that are excellent at flanking, but they heavily rely on mobility to weave in and out, poke the backline or engage and disengage, Camille is excellent at stopping them from doing what they want to do. So if you see a LeBlanc or an Ahri trying to flank, you can engage on them with your ulti and completely block them from flanking, from getting away, and make it really hard for them to do their job. I'm going to wrap up the team fighting section with some general advice, not really a specific example, because you might be wondering, what is my role in this fight? What does it look like? What is my positioning? And that's going to heavily depend on the game state and the champions in the game, because Camille's not really a one-dimensional champion. It's not like you're playing a Jinx where you're going to be playing front to back most of the time. Camille is really good at diving onto the backline, but she's also good at killing tanks, so it really depends on the game state. Where, for example, if you have a really strong backline, maybe your Hui is quite fed, or maybe you have a Jinx Lulu, you're probably going to be playing more of a front-to-back style. But if they have a really strong backline, or you have a dive comp, maybe you're going to be diving onto the backline. Maybe you have a Kai'Sa, you might have a Zed mid, Talon, stuff like that. You're going to be diving and looking to blow up the backline with them. But it is important, if you're a 1 to 2 item Camille, Ravenous Hydra Triforce, most of the time you're not going to be the primary engage. Well, you want to be waiting for either your Nautilus, your Alistar, maybe your jungler to engage the fight before you go in, or you're just going to get blown up. Now, you can engage at later points in the game when you have distance, more GA especially, you can look to engage. Especially if you go Seeker's Armguard or a Zonya's, pop that stopwatch in your ulti, but there's going to be a lot of situations, especially in a 5v5 even-numbered situation, where it's going to be hard for you to be primary engage, and you're also going to be follow-up. But as for if you're going to be positioning front to back or trying to dive onto the backline, it really depends on the game state and the situation. But if you're in a game where you want to be diving onto backline, you feel like you can primary engage without getting blown up, you can look to flank, run for the jungle with sweeper, try to get onto their backline, or you can just E-flash onto the backline. You have a lot of engage range, but most of the time, in an even state, an even game state, you don't want to be the one primary engaging unless you're really fed, or unless you have a lot of strong tanky items, because you're just going to get blown up. You want to be creating side lane pressure, of course, trying to have an uneven numbered team fight, 5v4, where you can engage because you have more teammates to follow you up, so even if you die, you're probably going to win that fight. But as for if you're playing front to back or diving, you really have to pay attention to the champions of the game and the way the game state's going. Next up, we're going to be going through some of the most common mistakes that I see so many Kimber players make, so that while you're learning this champion, you can keep them in mind and try to avoid building any bad habits. Now, I've got 3 main mistakes for the early game and the mid game, and for the early game, it's using your E too aggressively when you have no idea where the jungler is, because your E is a good trading tool, don't get me wrong, but it's also your only escape tool. So if you utilize your E, and especially if you're taking TP Ignite, if you're Eing forward, it's really hard for you to survive a jungle gank if you don't have him in mind. So basically every time you want to be using your E, you should be aware of where the jungle is, if he could come before you commit your E, and if you have no idea if he could be top, then maybe just stick to trading with WQ, playing around your passive and holding your E as your escape tool. Now, another mistake that I see in the early game is making the lane way too volatile, levels 1 through 3. Because Camille, even though you are quite strong 1 to 3, if you get too low, let's say you're playing up against a Conqueror champion, you make it very volatile, you're both half HP, getting lower and lower, most of the time it's going to favor that type of champion. Because it's really hard for you to get prio in that type of situation as you have no wave clear spells. If you're both low HP, let's say versus a Renekton, you're both half, and he gets prio, he levels up before you, he has high fury, it's going to be really hard for you to not only play out the rest of that lane, but also if you wanted to receive a gank, it's really hard to gank for a Camille that's low HP, bad wave state, really big stack wave against her, where if you're full HP, taking nice little short trades, and you're able to trim the wave, it's a lot easier to use your jungle as a resource to get yourself fed. Now, the final mistake is of course going to be wave control related, because I see so many Camilles. Of course, I'm not saying you need to have complete mastery of wave control, but the most common mistake they make is not knowing if they should be slow pushing or hard pushing the wave. Because Camille has such terrible wave clear that the only way you can secure yourself a recall in most situations is from slow pushing a massive wave and then hard pushing the last wave into crashing it and then recalling. So you have to pre-decide basically with each wave that's approaching, am I going to be slow pushing this wave or hard pushing it? And if you're slow pushing it, just last it as slowly as you can. And then when you've got a nice wave built up, maybe 12 minutes, maybe even a 3-stack wave, then you can hard push the next wave coming in, clear it as fast as you can with your W, auto QQ, get rid of that wave, and then secure yourself a nice base. Now, as for the mid game, the most common mistake by far that Camille players make is constantly engaging on mid. You should be looking mid every single time you're coming out on base and looking to make a proactive play, catch the enemy team out, but you shouldn't just be committing no matter what happens. As you're approaching the lane, you need to be watching mid, a non-committal deploy like we talked about, watching mid and taking in all that information. Is the bot lane the enemy bot lane? Are they playing very aggressive? Are they contesting waves? Is anyone showing on the side waves? Is my jungler close enough to follow me up if I go in? You need to be taking in all this information and make an educated decision if you're committing or not. Because if you fly on in and their jungler's sitting behind them, your one's at grop, you're probably going to die and waste a lot of tempo. Now, a lot of people make this mistake and it becomes a habit as they're learning the champion, because maybe they go from playing, let's say, Fiora to Camille, and Camille has a lot more engage, a lot more threat on mid, of course, so they feel like it's really good for them. Constantly looking mid to attack and try to get picks. Of course it is good if you can successfully do that, but if you do it every single time without taking in all that information, it's going to become a bad habit, so I want you to avoid making that a habit. I want the habit to be, I'm watching mid every time I come out of base, I'm taking in all the information, and I'll decide to attack or not depending on what's happening. And as for the other common mid-game mistakes, over-diving in teamfights and skirmishes is a big one. Because even though you have extremely long-range engage, your teammates most likely do not. They're not going to be able to follow you up and get there straight away, so you need to either be tanky enough, maybe you're at a later point in the game, you've your Death Dance, your Maw, your Sterak's, and you can buy a lot of time, or your team needs to be playing champions that can follow you up, or they just need to be close to you. You can't just fly on in max range E-Flash ulti and expect your team to be able to follow you up. Maybe they're playing Xayah, maybe you have a Syndra mid. It's going to take them time to approach and follow up your ulti. You need to be keeping tabs on not just the enemy's positioning, trying to catch them out, but also the positioning of your teammates and see if they're able to follow you up with spells or just auto attacks. And the final mid-game mistake is side lane usage. A lot of Camilles are either in the camp where they play side lane way too much and they're not looking for enough proactive plays, or they fall into the camp where they're not using side lane enough. They're just looking to constantly attack the enemy team mid, trying to group up, play more of an ARAM style, when you really need to be hitting that balance. You have to get it just right, where you're playing side lane, trying to create pressure, trying to get a lot of gold income. If the enemy's not there, trying to punish, get towers, but you're also constantly looking mid for picks, trying to get picks around objectives, creating 5v4s. It's really important you work on that balance. And it's easier said than done, of course, but in your reviews you should be watching not only for any missed opportunities to attack them mid or attack them at objectives, but also looking for missed opportunities where you could have gained yourself a lot of gold from just committing to side lane. Next up, we're going to be covering the draft, because once you have Camille in your champion pool, it can be quite important to know the best situations for when you want to be picking this champion, and also what to watch out for when it's bad to pick it up, because there's a lot of champions that the enemy can show that's going to make Camille very strong or very weak, and not just the enemy team, your own team as well. There's going to be some champions that you play with that are going to feel really good and make Camille feel quite strong, but also champions on your team that are going to hold your champion back from accomplishing what you want to be doing. So this can be useful in solo queue, to know the best situations, the highest win chance for Camille, but also when you're playing with your boys, maybe you're playing Clash, it can be helpful so that you know how to build a comp around your champion to set yourself up for success. So we'll start with the champions that you want to be seeing on your team. And as for jungle, there's going to be two categories. It's either going to be frontline engage, so champions like Sejuani or Zac, where they can go in before you, they can start the fight, they can take all the damage, get some CC down, and set yourself up. Or it's going to be champions that can snowball through you. Because as we know, Camille has some of the best ganks set up in the game, so if you play with a champion like Talia or a champion like Brand, jungle champions that use resources very well and snowball quite hard, you can snowball them, because if they come to your lane, of course you just lock them in your ulti, Brand or Talia dump all the spells in, free kill, and they're going to be able to snowball and contribute into the game as well. And as for mid lane champions, there are two categories of champs that are good with Camille, and the first one is dive buddies, so champions that are going to be going in with you, and specifically Galio is one of the best champs in the game to play with Camille. It's quite a classic combo from a while back now, where Camille can easily engage, E-ulti, and Galio's going to follow up, so Galio's ulti will hit 100% of the time, and even if they Zhonya's or something like that, Galio's going to be sitting on you with his W ready to catch them out of stasis. Now, the benefit of this combo is not just that you're going to land the Galio combo, is also it makes Camille a lot harder to kill, because Camille's quite squishy until 3 or 4 items, so if you engage but you have a Galio ulti, big magic grows his shield, and he comes down crashing on top of them if they try to kill you, then it's going to be really easy for you to engage. So that's probably the best champion to have in mid lane with Camille, but some other ones are going to be champs like Akali that are going to follow you into battle, or just in general long-range follow-up. So champions like Irelia and Sol, where if you ulti, they can just dump all their spells in your ulti, or champs like Hui as well are quite good. So it doesn't really matter too much as long as you don't have, greedy AD assassins. We'll touch on that later. But dive buddies that are going to be following you into battle, or just long-range artillery mages that can dump spells in your ulti are going to help a lot. Now, as for your bot lane, it doesn't quite matter as much as jungle and mid in my opinion, but for AD carry, it's very similar to mid, where you either have dive buddies, so Kai'Sa or Samira champs like that fly in with you, or follow-up. So champs with follow-up abilities like Smolder feels quite nice, where you lock somebody down with Camille ulti, Smolder can W ulti, chuck it on in with you, or even a champion like Seraphine, Misfortune, Ziggs, all champions like this, where you lock somebody down with your ulti and they can follow you up, even if they're very far away. Now, as for support, it's highly recommended to play with frontline engage. So champions like Maokai, champions like Nautilus feel quite good, because they can go in first, start the fight, and it's going to be a lot easier for you to do your job, instead of trying to be primary engage Camille. Now, as for the champions you're bad with from jungle, it's going to be AD low threat junglers. So champions like Graves and champions like Kayn, they're not really what you want to be playing Camille with, because there's a lot of situations where you run into a matchup where you're going to be relying on your gank setup. Camille is some of the best gank setup in the game, but if you have a weak early game jungler like a Kayn, for example, and you verse a Renekton or any type of bruiser with plated steel caps, they're just going to 1v2 you, so your gank setup is not going to be as useful. So it's really hard to get through these really hard matchups, because even though Camille's 1-3 is quite strong, the rest of her lane is quite weak, but that is nullified in a lot of situations by her great gank setup. But if your jungler can't even use that, if you're just going to get 1v2'd, then you're on your own and your matchups are going to be quite difficult. So playing with champions like Graves and Kayn can be quite challenging. Now, as for the mid and AD carry champs you don't want to see, it doesn't matter that much, but champions that rely on a front line are going to feel quite bad with Camille. Not really for you, but for them. So from mid, it's going to be champs like Azir, champions like Veigar, and AD carry, of course, the classic champs like Kog'Maw and Aphelios, where they can do a lot of damage over time if they have champions standing in front of them. They need meatballs, they need frontline, they need champs to CC the enemy team's divers, but Camille's not really that good at playing a front-to-back style of fight, so it doesn't feel quite as optimal to play Camille with these front-to-back champions. Now, it's not the worst thing in the world. I wouldn't avoid picking Camille just because you have an Azir or an Aphelios, of course. It's just, if you had a choice, then the dive buddies we talked about before, a Gallo or an Akali flying in with you, or even champs that can dump spells from far away, is going to feel a lot better than playing Camille with like a Veigar or an Anivia or something like that. And as for support, enchanters can feel fine with Camille if you have frontline and jungle, but I would say champions that feel the worst are going to be hook champs. So champs like Thresh, champs like Blitzcrank, they don't really buff you up, they don't really give you any survivability, but they also don't really provide any engage or any type of frontline for you as well. Moving on to the enemy team, and the champions that Camille is good against, the champions that you want to see on the enemy team. For top lane, it's going to be matchups where you can easily get prio, or easily get to your Triforce for free. So champions like Garen, champions like Dr. Mundo, they are also very weak in the early game, so it can be quite easy for you to get your items, or just get push and move around the map and try to make plays. Now, as for jungle, it's going to be low threat early junglers, so champions like Kayn, champions like Echo, they are not very strong early game, so even if you're in a tough matchup like a Jax or a Renekton, their ganks are so weak, you should be able to, play out those matchups and not get one shot compared to versing a champion with a lot of threat. Now, the thing about these champions as well, these greedy jungle champs, Kayn and Echo, is Camille is also very good at marking them in team fights. So if they try to flank, try to be creative, Kayn through the wall, stuff like that, you can just ulti onto them, onto the Kayn, the Echo, and make it really hard for them to do their job. And as for mid lane, it's going to be two categories. Either a mobile mid, so champions like Victor, champions like Orianna, especially Ori, can feel quite good, because when you E onto her, most Oriannas are going to ulti off reflex, and you can just ulti on her to dodge that and lock her down. Now, the other category is going to be champions that rely on mobility they can easily block. So champions like LeBlanc, champions like Katarina, very easy for you to stop them from doing what they want to do in a team fight. And of course, Camille's ulti is a cancel to channels, so you can actually cancel Katarina ulti with that as well. Very hard for anyone to play Katarina into Camille if Camille is really thinking about marking her and blocking her from achieving her job. Now, as for bot lane, for AD carry, it's going to be low damage champions. So champions like Jhin, champions like Ezreal can feel quite good. Very easy for you to lock them down without getting bursted and completely blown up, compared to if you try to engage on a red white Aphelios or something like that. And as for support, it's going to be champions that they're low CC champs, or champions where their crowd control is very easily dodgeable with your ulti. So champions like Pyke can be quite easy, their CC is not that reliable, and very easy to dodge for Camille. Or a champion like Sona, she has one CC spell, and you can dodge that with ulti. So champs like that are a lot easier than playing against a champion like an Alistar or a Leona, they can just lock you down forever. Moving on to the champions that Camille is bad against, and if you're mainly playing Camille in solo queue, this is the most important category for you, because I strongly recommend picking Camille as a 4th or a 5th pick, so you have a lot of opportunity to see the majority of the draft and know if Camille's actually going to be a good pick or not. Now, as for top lane, the champs you want to be avoiding are the champions that beat you in lane and inside lane, because a lot of champions beat Camille in lane, but let's say, for example, you slightly lose lane to an Aatrox or a Pantheon, you are going to outscale them eventually and beat them in side lane, but if you are up against a Fiora, a Jax, champions like that, even if you're slightly ahead in lane, they do beat you in side lane, and it can be very hard for you to do your job unless they make a lot of mistakes. Now, as for jungle, it's going to be champions that make it very hard to side lane. So champions like Evelynn, champions like Talia, if you try to side lane, against them, they can just rock up and one-shot you. You know, Talia flies in with ulti, Evelynn pops out of stealth. Really hard for you to play the game, especially because, you know, Triforce Ravenous Hydra, you are going to be quite squishy and easy to burst, and it can feel quite bad to build MR as a third item as well, especially if you're in an AD matchup. So if you're versus a Jax or a Pantheon or something, and they have Evelynn or Talia as a jungler, it can be very hard for you to play the game. Now, as for mid and AD carry, it's going to be high burst champions, because when you fly in, of course, you don't really want to be getting one-shots, so champions like Cassiopeia, champions like Syndra. Syndra is quite annoying because she can cancel your E with her E quite easily before you're in ulti range, and Cassio is really annoying because, of course, she can put her poo on the floor, the W, and if you're actually E'd onto a wall and she puts her W down, it won't let you cast E2 because it counts as a gap closer, so you'll be stuck on the wall, you can't even walk, you're just stuck there getting destroyed by the Cassio, so these champions are quite hard to play Camille into. Now, AD carry high burst champs, of course, like Lucian Nami, champs like Draven, they are just going to be looking to burst you. Draven, of course, is E can stop your E as well, quite annoying. So champions that have a lot of spikes in the 1 to 2 item range and can blow you up in the early game if you try to go in. Now, as for support, champions that make it hard to go in, you can see the recurring theme from mid AD carry support. So champions that make it hard to go in from support are going to be champs with a lot of CC. So, you know, champs like Leona, champs like Alistar, or champions in general like a Zyra or a brand support. If people still play that, Zyra can be quite annoying, because you're going into a Rylai's, Leandri's type of situation versus Zyra with all their plants set up, very hard for you to even move or do your job. And I'll wrap up the drafting section with a couple full draft examples in case you wanted to be building a comp around yourself in Clash or playing with your boys, they want to be setting you up. These are just sort of what a Camille comp should look like. It's some good examples, and maybe you can get some inspiration for that for either Clash or solo queue. Up next, we're going to be covering Camille's identity and the mindset you should have when playing this champion. In Camille's identity, she's really a champion that excels in setting up your jungler, excellent gank setup, excellent long-range engage, but her early game is quite weak. Her 1 to 3 is not bad in a lot of situations, but up until around level 4 to Triforce and so many matchups, you are going to be quite weak. You need to be playing around there. You mainly play for gank setup and setting up your jungler for success, and then once you have Triforce and a few more items, you're really going to start to carry the game. So you really need to be playing as if you are weak on the timers that you're weak, so that you don't take a really bad trade, have to base, lose a couple tower plates, and get really far behind, because you need to get to your Triforce without being significantly behind, so you can actually abuse that spike. Now, Camille is also one of the strongest scaling tops in the game, so playing selfish on this champion is going to benefit you in a lot of situations, but because you have the ability to make long-range picks, long-range engages, you really need to be working on that balance. You need to play selfishly to increase your gold income and get strong, but also you don't want to be missing out on any opportunities and abusing the limitations of your champion. There's a difference between a champion like Camille and a champion like Gwen or Fiora, where all three of you normally want to be playing quite selfishly and getting stronger and stronger, as Camille actually has the option to look for picks and look to attack the enemy team, where Fiora and Gwen, of course, don't really have any threatening spells to reach their backline unless they're really out of position. So Camille, you need to be working on that balance and hit a great middle ground between side lane selfishness and also looking to attack the enemy team when they're out of position. Camille is also one of the best champions of the game at locking down a priority target, because so many champions, especially recently made ones, rely on their insane mobility to get out of a tough spot, to get out of bad situations. But Camille, for example, up against a Zeri or a LeBlanc, those champions that desperately rely on their mobility to escape after getting their initial damage down, she can easily lock them down and make it easy for either yourself or your teammates to kill them. Especially a champion like Zeri, if she's trying to jump over the wall and you're locking down with ulti, she's just going to get pulled right back, and she can't really utilize a key part of her kit because your champion is so good at locking her down and denying that. Something that's also underrated on Camille is you actually have excellent Baron damage. There's going to be a lot of situations where you push out bot lane, make somebody react, and you can actually TP into Baron and rush it, because with your true damage queue, especially around 2 to 3 items, you can do significant damage to Baron when given enough time, and you can really burst it down and help your team secure that objective in a timely manner, where if you're playing a champion like Fiora or a champion like Renekton, of course, almost no Baron damage, not very useful in that situation, but that's something Camille can abuse. Now, as for the mindset you need to have, it's really important that once you have Triforce, it's pretty much a switch in your brain to start playing a lot more aggressive, looking for more skirmishing and more early game fights, more trading in lane, because without Triforce, you are quite weak in skirmishes. You rock up to a grub fight, for example, with a Phage, you know, maybe Sheen Phage versus a Renekton, level 9 Renekton, you're probably going to be a lot weaker than that type of champ. But at Triforce, you do spike quite well, and even though you might not be stronger than all of these champions that are good at team fighting, you're still very strong in a 1v1 setting and still great at making picks, especially if you've created a numbers advantage through using side. It's really good for you to look for mid plays, especially at Triforce, because you have a lot of damage to follow up your lockdown. And although we did just touch on it, it's so important I need to go into a bit more detail. Your champion is great at making picks, don't get me wrong. Your champion is excellent at catching the enemy team off guard, especially around mid lane when they're trying to contest mid lane prior. But your champion is also uses gold extremely well. Your champion is strong in side lane, you can farm camps quite well with Tiamat, with Ravenous Hydra, and the more items you have into the game, the easier your job becomes, because you want to be looking to catch and trying to engage on the enemy backline and catch them off guard. But of course, in the early points of the game, 1 to 2 items, Triforce, Ravenous Hydra, and let's just say cooldown boots or even tabs, you're very squishy. You're a champion that's easily blown up. If you try to engage on maybe a Syndra, she'll just ult you, a strong bruiser with 2 items, but the later points into the game, your job becomes even easier once you have Death Stance or you have more Sterax, maybe even GA at the later points in the game. It just gets easier and easier to engage onto the backline because you're not going to get blown up instantly. Your team is going to have more time to follow you up. So keep that in mind, and also your true damage is going to be a lot higher. Every single item you get, you are going to feel a significant boost in power. So don't tunnel, oh, my lane is done, I'm going to run around and try to make picks. You need to hit that balance between selfish gameplay, getting stronger and stronger, and punishing the opponent's mistakes. Next up, we're going to be going through how to learn Camille step by step. Because although this guide is good, in my opinion, not to pat myself on the back, there is so much information and it can feel overwhelming. There's so much to take in. So I've tried to narrow it down into 3 levels of mastery, where if you're just learning the champion, level 1, if you're feeling good, level 2, and if you want to be building your mastery, taking it to the next level, then level 3. I'll start with level 1, and of course practicing the mandatory combos. So all of these nice little short combos, I'll put some examples on the screen, but trying to learn these really short, easy combos, especially for lane, to get the hang of before you start to play the champion in rank, before you queue up. Because if you can't do a combo such as the auto attack reset on Q, or the EW, you really shouldn't be playing it in a rank game yet. You should be trying to get that down in normal games or practice tool before you look to play her. Now, the most important step for level 1, in my opinion, is being able to get to Triforce without getting behind. This is something you should be going into game with the intention to try to pull off, because a lot of people just queue up, they rock up to their laning phase, and they play aggressive. But if you're learning Camille, I strongly recommend your default, your base level, being I'm getting to my Triforce unscathed. I'm getting there with 0 deaths or 0 bad deaths. If you die to get a double kill with your jungler, that's fine. 0 bad deaths and not down, I'd say 10 CS, 15 CS minimum. But just trying to be even, being same level, being around down 10 CS, maybe up 10 CS, consistent, stable laning phase, where you can come back to lane with your Triforce, and then start to really lay on the hurt, because if you can't get to Triforce without getting very far behind, you're going to struggle on Camille a lot, because that is when you spike, you're very weak before that point, and if by the time you have your Triforce, you're down half an item, you're down a level, maybe 2 levels, you're not going to be able to abuse that power spike, so it's going to be really hard for you to pull off this champion. And I'm not just going to send you in blind and say, alright, queue up, get to your Triforce, don't get behind, good luck. Of course, I do have some advice for you. And the most important steps to get to your Triforce unscathed is going to be your wave control. And I have made a full wave control guide that may help you, but specifically being able to slow push and hard push your waves is very important, because Camille has terrible wave clear. So if you're unable to slow push and build really big waves and then crash them as fast as you can, when you get to that fast push wave, once you've built up your wave, you need to know when to fast push. If you can't execute that consistently, you can find yourself in situations where you can't recall, where you're stuck in lane, the enemy team freezes, and it's going to be really hard for you to not get behind. Also, the way you play out your trading is going to matter a lot as well, where a lot of Camilles take extended trades, where they feel confident, they E onto you auto Q, and they're feeling good at the trade, so they extend it. They keep the trade going, but you need to be finishing the trade with your passive while they're CC'd by E, taking these nice little short trades and just getting their HP bar lower and lower, so that when it comes time to either all in them or maybe secure your back timer, you're going to have a bit of an advantage from the good trades you took earlier. The reason the wave control is so important is because back timers are everything on Camille. Ideally, you can stay in lane for an extended period, take really short trades, maintain high HP, and try to base for a significant buy. So like a whole Sheen, a whole Phage, you don't want to really be basing on Grasp Camille for a Ruby Crystal or a Longsword, anything like that. You want to be doing big buys and using your TP to get big items. And normally around the timer, when you're close to Triforce, if you have your TP up, sometimes you will stay in the lane. Maybe you'll be 300 gold off Triforce and you could have based, but you'll just stick around. You'll be in a disadvantage, of course, because you didn't recall, but you really want to be holding on to that if you have TP and securing your recall, TPing back for Triforce. But if you don't have TP, it's really important that your back timer is your top priority, because if you ever miss a base timer on Camille and you don't have TP, the enemy top lane is going to make your life miserable, because you're not going to have any wave clear, and they most likely will if they're playing basically any champion. Renekton, Cassandra, they all have the ability to push you under tower and make you suffer. So if you miss out on your timer, your back timer, let's say you crash a big wave and you could have recalled, but maybe you looked for a gank mid, something like that, when you didn't have TP, and you try to walk back to lane, maybe chunked from the gank, it's going to be really hard for you to ever get a base off. So valuing your back timer as your top priority is going to really help you get to Triforce unscathed. Now, if you find yourself being able to get to Triforce consistently, maybe you did it 3 or 4 games in a row now, the next step for level 1 is starting to use your jungler as a resource, because in my experience, I found there are 2 types of top laner in most situations. Somebody that always cries for ganks, and somebody that never cries at all. Somebody that never asks for ganks even at a good opportunity, so you need to hit that balance. Of course, you don't need to be constantly asking for ganks on Kimmel every game, but if your lane is in a really good state, maybe they're playing Ignite Rumble, you're taking good trades, you have the wave outside your tower, you should be pinging and letting your jungler know this is a good gank. But for some advice on that, your ganks at level 6 onwards are going to be a lot higher probability, or of 100% gank, than your ganks early game, because there are so many situations where you call for a gank, you E, your opponent flashes the E, and you've used your jungler's time. It's not horrible, don't get me wrong, to burn a flash, but if you have ulti, it is a guaranteed kill, so you might as well wait for that timer, because if you burn somebody's flash at level 3, by the time you're 6, their flash is probably going to be back up, so you wasted your jungler's time for a very little game. But at 6, if your jungler's been playing bot the whole game, maybe they're doing well, getting your bot lane fed, or maybe they're not, doesn't matter, but mainly around the time when you're level 6, your gank timer might have Sheen, level 6, it's going to be a lot higher success rate than if you try to gank early, but that doesn't mean you should never look for early ganks. The main point of this is practicing using your jungler as a resource, so if you ever call up for a gank, and it's good or bad, you need to be reviewing it and figuring out why, and trying to only call up your jungler at good timers when it's to punish the opponent. You don't want to be calling him up to bail you out of a sticky situation, you want to be using him as an aggressive tool to get yourself or him fed. Moving on to level 2, and now it's time for you to start to master all of the other laning phase combos, because they're all important in a different way. For example, the combo where you could walk up to somebody, let's say under tower, to a minion, E away, and you can auto-attack Q to them, but just before your E hits the wall and pull you back to safety. And it makes it really hard for them to retrade onto you. You can even use that passive to block the tower shot. Combos like that are more important for being proactive on Camille, dominating your laning phase, trying to get a lead, because if you can get to Triforce unscathed as your baseline, now it's time to start to try to win your matchups. And once you can do that, the next step is trying to abuse your Triforce spike, because once you got Triforce, it's like a completely different champion. Your trade's so much stronger, you're so much stronger in skirmishing, you have a lot more options open to you, because you're not rocking up to a grub fight with a Fade Sheen, trying to fight these strong Renektons, these Cassantes, these art champions that spike quite early. You are a champion that's very powerful at Triforce, so you need to play like that. Especially if you have tier 2 boots, it makes it very easy to kite in and out, proc your Q2 onto an enemy champion, kite, weave in and out, dominate the side lane, get side lane prio, or even just dominate skirmishes. So once you have Triforce, I want it to be a switch in your brain that you need to be playing more aggressive and trying to test the limits of this item. Now, most of the time in your early lane, you're probably playing more for the bounce back, trying to poke your opponent from outside of your tower, trying to freeze it. But once you have Triforce, I want you to be playing more so for priority, trying to push in your lane, trying to poke your opponent either under tower, trying to roam around, really start to push and look for players, where if your opponent leaves, maybe they go for a dragon, you can trade that early dragon for tower, because your champion does so much damage to towers with the double auto attack reset and Sheen procs once you have this item. So don't feel afraid. Don't hesitate on trading an early neutral objective, maybe a Herald, second dragon, anything like that to get yourself fed, because especially at Triforce you do significant damage to towers. The next step is I want you to start to practice your non-committal deploys. So instead of running straight down mid out of base looking for a play, or running straight down the side, run through the jungle, be creative, have a sweep, have some pinks, try to attack the mid if they're playing aggressive, observe their body language, and punish their mispositioning. But if they're respecting you or sitting far back, maybe just clear the vision that was around that area where you tried to attack and just go back to side. Don't just fully commit to side and miss out on attacking mid, or fully commit to mid and nothing happens and you waste time. Non-committal deploy, go halfway between and look for a play, and if not, back to side, play selfishly and get stronger and stronger. It's so important that you start at this point in your Camille journey to practice the balance. The balance between being a selfish side lane player, trying to win side, get solo kills on side lane, break towers, eat jungle camps, and also looking for opportunities. You don't want to be one or the other. You really need to hit that middle ground, try to find that balance. So a lot of your mid-game review should be centered around just that. Now, once you can do all that, once your mid-game is quite stable, I'd say the final point is to review your usage of your R, because Camille's R is such a key ability. A lot of people use it in overdive, or they ult the wrong person, maybe the frontline dives in and you just ult them for fun. Start to review it, and especially this spell is very good at dodging the abilities. You can use it to dodge an R ulti in lane, Cassante W, so many spells, Riven Q3. You need to be watching the way you use this spell and trying to get the maximum value out of it. Now we're going to be finishing it up with level 3, and this is where the little things start to really matter as you build mastery on this champion. And the first step is going to be start to master using your E and buffering it through crowd control, because there are so many situations where you can escape getting CC'd to death if you time your E perfectly, where for example, if a Lee Sin jumps behind you and he's about to insec you, you can buffer your E, so that as long as the hook shot hits the wall just after he kicks you, you're going to be pulled to safety. But if your E hits the wall, Before he kicks you, if it just hits the wall, starts to pull your way, and he kicks you, you're going to get your E cancelled and you're probably going to die. And this is really important in so many situations. You can buffer Gnar ulti, you can buffer Jayce so many times. When you're going to get knocked back or stunned or snared, your E can pull you away from danger as long as you buffer it correctly. So it's really important that you start to review your E timing relative to when you're about to get CC'd. Maybe you just got ganked by a Viego and you panicked and you show your E straight away and he cancelled it with his W. Start to really break down your E usage compared to when champions are CCing on you and master the buffer. And the next step is quite similar, and that is going to be to buffer your Q through crowd control. Now, this is a lot harder, in my opinion, than buffering E, so it's something that you need to practice a lot and try to do with intention, and it will take a lot of intuition. You need to start to learn the trading patterns and the habits of a lot of champions that you verse, and practice buffering your Q through their spells. So, for example, two of Camille's hardest matchups, Renekton and Jax, if you time your Q perfectly, and you can even do this with Q2, it feels a lot better, you can buffer your Q through their spell. So as Renekton's stunning you, you can buffer your Q while you're stunned, so you're going to get a shield and block a lot of that damage, and the damage to follow up. And even through Jax, he's going to run at you with E, you can actually buffer your Q if you time it perfectly through his E, so that you get the kickoff and get your passive shield, or even just the damage. It's going to make it a lot easier. And even versus Jax, imagine if you buffer your Q and your E away and buffer Q as your E, and you manage to buffer both of those spells correctly, you're just going to completely dominate that counter matchup. So really important that you practice buffering both of these spells through CC, and you're not going to be able to do it every single time, don't get me wrong, that's unrealistic, but if you can at least do it most of the time, then you're going to feel really confident in these types of situations. Now, if you're working on being a level 3 Camille, that probably means you're getting to your Triforce and either being ahead or even, and your mid game is quite consistent. So if you can pull that off, then it's time to start to review your team fighting and your skirmishing with a lot more detail. Be a lot more critical on yourself and specifically the way you're using your spells. If you rocked up to a fight, did you use your E on the wrong target? Did you use your E and ulti too quickly? Or did you not stack your Q? Could you have stacked your Q on a mini raptor? Maybe you hit the raptors to pull them closer to dragon, and you stack your Q on a mini one so that you have a lot more time to activate Q2. Maybe you can stack it off a blast cone. Really start to break down and analyze how you could be stacking your Q before you go in, and specifically the way you're using your E and ulti, if you should have held on to these spells into a better situation, or maybe you didn't use them at all. It's really important to start to break down your spell usage on this champion and make sure you're using your Q and your E and ulti very well. Now, a big thing that separates the Camilles that are just very good at laning or maybe even team fighting on this champion, and the Camilles that have very high mastery and a great understanding of her as a whole champion, is going to be the creative opportunities. Because I want to see you start reviewing at this point in your Camille journey the opportunities that you're missing. Could you have crashed a wave and attacked mid? Maybe you could have ran straight mid out of base and given 6 creeps top and killed their Yasuo, that's 2-0. Or maybe even it's 14 minutes into the game and tail plates have fallen. Maybe you base, you run straight bot, you give your top tier 1 because there's no plates, and you double kill their bot lane. There are always going to be opportunities that you miss on this champion, almost always, because you have so many options. You have so much long range threat, so much hard engage, so there are bound to be opportunities in the game that you missed out on punishing the jungle, the mid, the bot, anyone except for your lane opponent. So you need to start reviewing and seeing if you could have moved out of base and not just default to, oh, I'm going to go top, I'm going to lose 6 creeps, or I'm going to lose a plate, or I'll lose my top tower. There might be times where it's better to give that small loss and attack the rest of the map instead. The last point I'll say for this section, if you ever find yourself in a situation where you get to Triforce and you're behind, even if you have really high mastery on the champion, that is a game that you need to be reviewing with a lot more detail, because your baseline should always be, I want to get to Triforce and I'm going to be even or ahead. I don't want to be behind at Triforce and be unable to abuse my strong spike. So even if you're really good at the champion and you already had a base level of doing that, you still need to go back and review the games that you got behind and try to make a difference. If you first Riven, for example, and you get cheese with Ignite, have to base TP back, maybe even die, or die to a gank, you need to be reviewing that in a lot more detail and not letting that happen again, because your baseline needs to be, I've got Triforce, now I'm going to get my best work done. But if you get behind before you get to that point, even if you're really good at skirmishing, team fighting mechanically on Camille, it's not going to matter. Next up, we're going to be going through a full game example where I took you through my thought process throughout this entire game, just to give you a better understanding of what I'm thinking about at various parts of the game. Now, I picked this example in particular because this was a game where I showcased a lot of the Camille concepts throughout this entire guide that we've been talking about, and also a game that was quite difficult. My mid-jungle were very tilted at each other, feeding, not playing very well, and they're playing selfish champs, right? They're playing Kindred and Kiana, so it's a really good game to show what happens in a situation where your team's playing poorly, and there's a lot of opportunities for a Camille player. So right off the bat, you can see I started Q in this matchup because Camille has a strong 1-3 and Cassante does not, so I really want to be abusing that. And here I go in with my E, even though I was just out of range, because it can allow for me to hit my auto QQ. So already a kill right off the bat, due to me starting Q instead of W, because I know I'm very strong in this matchup level 1, so I really wanted to be abusing that. And now I'm just mainly focused on getting my wave in. I'm of course going to hit him if he walks up, free grass proc, free extra bit of damage, but I mainly just want to get this wave crash, and then I'm going to look to make a play. Because a normal champ, most champions would base on this timer. Base and get double longsword, come back to lane. But Camille has so many more options in that, so I'm looking to attack mid instead. Because in this game we have Qiyana versus Wei. Wei extremely good scaling control mage versus an assassin. Qiyana has to snowball, so if I can use my pro to help mid, then I'm going to. So after that kill, we're going to TP back to lane just so I don't miss out on any farm. And I'm not able to trim and freeze this wave like you would on a lot of champions, even though I did get a kill, because I use a lot of my tempo to attack mid, which is fine. That's what you want to be looking to do on Camille. She's not really a champion. We're going to freeze the wave outside your tower and kill a lot of champs at level 4 anyway, so I'm happy just to allow the waves to ping pong as long as I'm using my timer. But as you can see, he's disrespecting the timers where I can trade onto him, and now I'm in a very good position. We're taking some good short trades, and now he's quite chunked. I'm looking to stop his recall and further punish this guy. So as you can see, now chasing him down the lane, not letting him recall. So really good lane state for us to be in. I'm just going to slow push this wave, and this next wave is going to be the one that I want to hard push. So we talked about, be very decisive on your slow push and your hard push. And here you can see, dumping my Qs, dumping my W, basically everything I can. And sometimes you will dump E as well. But at that point, the mini wave was in the middle of the lane, so of course I can't. And I don't really need to recall. What am I on around 600 gold? Not worth it, because I'm so high HP. I'm fine to stay and greed for a plate. Now they can come back to bite you in a lot of situations, but I'm feeling confident due to how the early lane went, and I've already got 2 kills, and now I'm going to look to rotate with my prior and attack the rest of the map. It's a very common pattern on Camille. You can look to poke people under tower in certain situations, but in this game, there's a lot of actions. There's some skirmishing in top jungle, the mid lane matchup's very volatile, so of course I'm going to be looking to help in any way that I can. But now wave coming back towards me, double buff Cassante, going to get level 6 very soon. I need to be careful on this timer, so even though I was very strong, level 1 to 3, and I've got, what, 3 kills now, my champion is still Camille. I'm not that strong until Triforce, so I do have to respect the difference in power that his champion has right now. So allowing the wave to crash and just ping-pong it back and forwards is what I'm happy with, so that I can look for a base. I'm not trying to trim the wave, I'm not trying to trade into him and take damage for free. I'm just wanting to secure myself a recall. So I'm going to slow push these next couple waves most likely, and then hard push the following, so that I can get a good tempo recall. So we'll see what happens. Slow pushing, keeping the wave here, and as you can see from this wave, I'll jump back. I'm allowing the tower to do a lot of work to the minions before I farm them. I am trimming them slightly, but as you can see, I let that tower shoot the minion twice before I took it out. And there I could have probably held it a bit longer, but generally I'm trying to slow push this wave as slowly as I can, so that now this next wave is right in front of my tower. It's a lot easier for me to slow push from this position, instead of trying to crash a wave that's right in front of his tower. Especially against a champion like Cassante, as you're probably aware if you played against him. If you try to get a wave out from in front of his tower, he can just scoop you under the tower with Q3, W and ulti, and have a bad time. But now I'm trying to hard push this wave, which is very far away from his tower, so he's not going to have that option. So you can see I'm trying to hit him and the wave with W, and just get this wave in as quick as I can, utilizing my Qs. And now I'm probably going to base. So you can see a big thing we talked about throughout this guide, being very decisive on your slow push and your hard push. Now, this is another concept that is not unique to Camille, but something you can keep in mind. On this timer, I could have based. I crashed a big wave, and I have 2,000 gold. However, if I based, it would have been Phage, Longsword, Dagger. Something like that. Not the biggest spike in the world. It's not really going to make me stronger than Cassante, compared to if you're playing a champ like Aatrox and you base like with this amount of gold, and you got a serrated Dirk, double longsword, something like that. That is a lot stronger than this type of spike. So instead, because my TP is in a minute, I'm fine to delay my recall and play more for Triforce. And of course, on this timer, because I crashed a wave, I'm not doing nothing. I'm still in the enemy jungle trying to attack him, helping my kindred get his mark. But you can see the difference in back timing on Camille, because you don't always need to, alright, I crash a big wave, I'm going to base. If your TP is close to being up, it is okay to delay a back timer, because you don't really want to be basing if you're 300 or 400 gold off Triforce, if you can stay in lane and back in TP later on. So just slow pushing this wave, last hitting, even though on this timer, I really can't create much pressure because I don't have my item. Coming back with Phage and Dagger and then having to base 400 gold later is just not ideal. So slow pushing this wave, as you can see, keeping the lane state very stable, because if I went for a fight on this timer and died when I've got Triforce in base soon, it's just going to be a big throw. Very unnecessary. I want as stable of an early game as possible for myself before I get to this key item. I'll skip ahead a little bit. It's just going to be slow push into hard push like we talked about, and then I'm going to be looking to base and pick up my Triforce, and then I'm going to be looking to be very proactive in this game. Now, heading on to the map with Triforce, we're going to cover a lot of concepts in one swoop that we talked about, where I talked about on the level 3 section, looking to be creative. And here, I could go straight back to top, as I'm going to lose farm soon, and I don't want to give Cassante 2 plates, right? Normally, however, in this game, I've already got a significant lead against Cassante. Even if I gave him 2 plates and this wave, I would still be stronger than him. So this is a sacrifice I'm fine to make. So instead, I initially look for a mid play, but of course, way insta-fear me, hard to deal with. And something you'll see here, I pretend to go back top. I click top while the minion still gets vision of me, and then I click back bot. So now they think I'm on my way back to top, but really I'm looking for a creative play bot. And as you can see, Cassante is blowing up my tower, he's got demolished, I'm losing farm. However, in this game, 11-7, I'm 3-0. I need to make something happen before the game completely falls apart. So here I'm pinging, let's go, and I'm able to actually pick up a double kill on their bot lane. What's a double kill? Yep, looks like a double. Rakan's going a bit crazy. Where as you can see, my creativity in this situation really turned the game around. Hyperscaling pick with Smolder, and I was able to essentially win the matchup for them. Where if I went straight back top, even though I wouldn't have lost 2 plates, I would have been able to keep a lot of that farm up. It's a lot easier, a lot better for the game state to do what I did, where I was looking mid, I was looking bot, looking to be creative, even though I gave a bit of an advantage to that Cassante. It doesn't matter in the grand scheme of this game. But if he was playing a champion like Jax, champion like Fiora, I would take that into account, of course. Maybe I'd still make this play, because at this point I was 3-0, and I'm willing to give up, a couple plates to make a creative play bot, but I would be more inclined to go back to top in that situation. So it really depends on what's going on in the game state. But in this game state in particular, I was completely okay with giving this Frozen Heart Cassante, who's so far behind, a couple of extra resources if it meant I could help the rest of my team out. So just trying to get this wave in now, looking to punish Cassante, but of course I don't want to tank a full combo to the face. Little trades like that. You can see Q damage Q, the true damage Q, run away, even though I might be able to stick on him and chase him down. I don't want to trade HP with this guy. I want to chunk him down, 100-0 trading, without taking any in response. So you'll see I'll probably do something similar here. True damage Q, boom, trade, run away, right? Now I'm trying to get a cheeky little Q2 in there, but most of the time I'm looking to do 100-0 trading. So here I was initially looking mid to punish this wave, but instead he fully committed to bot, so instead I took this crab and I was just sort of hovering around the area, looking to be a part of it. But Cassante TP'd to this bot play, and I could have gone back top, but I was already closer to mid, so I decided to commit here and just break some tower plates. So I wanted to be around the area in case they did dragon or the fight looked good, but here the fight just looked awful, my team is getting wrecked, so instead I chose to eat tower plates. So fine little rotate there, not the ideal. Of course, we would love to be a part of that play before Cassante got there, but it didn't work out in this situation because I just made a bot play. My TP was on cooldown. So now I'm going to be looking to just go back top and do the same thing again. So I'll probably look to get this wave in. And at this point, when you have your Triforce, you don't have to worry too much about slow pushing into hard pushing, as you don't really have wave clear yet, because you don't have Tiamat, of course, but you have a lot of damage, and you can clear the wave a lot faster than before you had Triforce. So get this wave in, try to break this tower down, and just further snowball my lead. Playing selfish at this timer, when initially I looked for a play, there was nothing, so I played fully for myself. I was eating tower plates mid, both waves mid and top, eating the top tower and the crab as well, just really maximizing my gold income so that I can carry at later points of the game. Now initially here I was trying to do a non-committal deploy and look if a play needed me, but here I was watching bot lane. As soon as Israel Eden, I TP'd. That was a condition I set in my mind. If this Israel commits, I'm going to TP and I'm going to punish them. So really looking to be as active as possible in this game, and here looking to go on Hui as well. Pretty sure I mistimed the Z. I go for the KS. Unlucky, but the bot play was great, right? I was initially going to deploy into bot river. If there's a play mid, I'll be there if there's a play bot. But of course, the Israel Eden, so it gave me a great opportunity just to TP and punish a lot faster. Now for this deploy, I remember this being a significant mistake, a lot of time wasted in this game. So initially, I like to say, you fog down to mid, and you commit if it looks good. If it looks like a great opportunity, you commit, and if not, it goes back to side. So here I should have gone straight back to top and pushed this wave all the way to tier 2. Because it looked like my bot lane's sitting really far back, the Israel's just throwing Qs, he's not giving any indication that he wants to be throwing, that he wants to be eating forward, so I should have gone back to top. But here I commit to this bad skirmish, my jungler and support already used all their spells, I waste my ulti on Rakan, very sloppy fight from me, but the fight is not the main problem. Of course, my R use was bad. The main problem is that I committed to this fight to begin with, when I should have gone straight back to top, got this wave all the way in, and tried to attack on the next opportunity, because an opportunity will present itself eventually, as long as I'm patient, but I really rushed into this one, and I feel like there's a bit of testosterone after making those 2 successful bot plays, double kills. I'm just constantly looking to punish their bot lane, but they got used to it at that point, and they were respecting, so it ended up with me wasting a absurd amount of time where I could have been, farming up a storm, eating camps, maybe even breaking tower, and really maximizing my income. So it worked out fine in the end, but this is a play where I'd recommend not committing to, because my bot lane was sitting far back, theirs was really respecting as well, and it was just not a good look overall. So now with this deploy coming onto the map, there was a lot more discipline from me than shown in the previous example, where here I go straight mid instead of a non-committal through the river, because there's just so much action happening, right? The Jarvan's EQ ulting forward, so many plays, and here it could be very tempting for me to try to clean up. All three of my teammates died, well, three of my teammates died. It could have been tempting for me to hard engage that, but I know the play is done. So I'm going straight back to side, pushing in my wave, and waiting for my future opportunity. So I'll one-shot this wave, and now I'm probably going to look again after one more wave, I'd assume. Actually, I'm going to be eating the Gromp. So here, the reason I'm eating this Gromp is because Dragon's up, they ace my team, they're just coming out on base. There's a high chance that they're all around this Dragon, controlling the area. So if I showed on the spot wave, there's a good chance they look to pick me. So I feel very scared to try to push in bot. I feel like they're going to collapse on me and try to kill me. So that's why I eat camp instead, and then I'm looking to attack mid here. So I'm going to hover around, and the Sway is playing quite respectfully. So I'm just going to go straight back to bot. So a lot more discipline than before. I'm not committing if the play looks bad. And then, of course, that's the solo queue special. The second you leave, your team gets caught out. I'm just going to be going back to side and playing a lot more selfish. So I'll skip ahead because it's just me pushing minion waves. But this whole time, my team is getting attacked, getting caught out. As you can see up there, we're losing towers. But it's important to play for yourself. If I TP mid here, I'm going to be sitting under tower, trying to wave clear with my W. Something like that. It's not really going to be very beneficial. I'm fine to drop my tower here and play more of selfish style and try to make people react to me. Also at this timer, I don't have my death stance completed yet. I'm a 2-item Camille, and we talked about that Triforce Hydra. You're very squishy. So as you can see, playing selfishly, trying to get this tower, made Cassante respond to me, and then I'm going to look for a play after. So EQ away, and I'm going to be looking to fog onto this. So I've made somebody respond to me on the side. I didn't react to what they were doing. I proactively made them respond, and now I'm looking to make picks of my own. So great sequence there overall, even though on paper, from a team point of view, it's not that great. We lost 2 towers. My team got caught out constantly. It was a great performance from me in terms of my discipline to not commit to a bad play, utilize side lane to make people react, and then collapse on the enemy team once I've already achieved that. So here, I feel like I'm greeding for, yeah, that's right, I'm greeding for death stance here. Playing really for camps, for waves, just trying to get my death stance, because if I base now and come down on map with the cauliflower hammer, I'm just not that strong. And at this point, my team, my jungle mid, especially playing quite poorly. So it's important for me to be at my strongest before I make a play. But I am keeping an eye on the map. I'm watching the minimap constantly, looking if they need me to TP. But now that I've got my death stance, I'm really going to look to be a lot more proactive. So I might even TP to this play. Yep, as soon as Cassante goes in, that's the condition, right? If I went in 5 seconds earlier, they would have disengaged this, but Cassante went really hard onto my AD carry, and here, instead of diving onto their backline, I just peel for my Smolder. So, good team fighting so far. Good use of spells. I don't want to be overcommitting onto somebody where I don't have follow-up. It's important that in situations you recognize when you want to be using your mobility to peel for your teammates, and when you want to be using it to punish the enemy backline. After that fight, I head straight back bottom once I've already stabilized the map. I'm very confident they're not going to rush Baron on this timer, so I have time to go bot, push it all the way in, and make somebody respond to me. Unlucky E right there, and once somebody's responded to me, then I'm going to be looking to make a proactive roam, a proactive attack on mid, because at this point, I would say it's favored for them to win a 5v5, even though I'm so strong. So I want to use the fact that I win side lane against everybody to pull somebody down here, and then attack the rest of their team. So eating camp here, I feel like I was over-respecting. Looking at it in hindsight, I was over-respecting on this timer. Could have gone for tower straight away, but I end up getting it in the end. So now I'm trying to pressure as much as I can. Pulling people down here is my goal. And once they've responded to me, then I'm going to be looking to attack the rest of the map. So as you can see, playing for this tower, abusing the crubs, and I'm pretty sure Cassante will show up soon. Yep, there he is, and now I'm going to be looking to attack his team. So constantly, you can see the pattern, pulling somebody away from the group so they can't just ARAM around Baron, and then looking to attack. So straight out of base, I'm going to be running straight mid and looking for a proactive play. So I'll slow down the VOD for these upcoming team fights, and on this deploy, I'm running straight top jungle because as you can see, the enemy team is fully controlling it and trying to make a pick for Baron. So if I went straight bottom and I was trying to make pressure, they would just rush down this Baron. I don't have time to create any side lane pressure, so I need to be here and help stabilize the map. And unfortunately, we lose this team fight. I make a mistake here. I should have used Ignite on this Jarvan and killed him. Wouldn't have changed anything. in hindsight in terms of the outcome of the team fight, but I could have at least killed that guy. But unfortunately, we're losing team fights, right? Our jungle and mid have been flaming each other all game. They are playing very poorly on selfish champs, Kiana and Kindred, 3 and 8 and 4 and 11. As you can see, not the best performance, but we're not going to give up yet. Now, the play I make here is something that is very rare to do, but it's something that can be important. And you don't only have to do it for a base defense situation, you can also do it for a key Baron fight, a key Elder fight, something like that, where instead of buying an elixir for a big upcoming situation like you might do on most champs, you can see here, I sell my Cauliflower Hammer and I buy the Seeker's Arm Guard. I even sell the Kindle Gem because I need the stopwatch for this fight. So I go in, we try to pick up him, I'm playing around slowly, and as you can see now, I'm pretty sure I didn't even need the Seekers in hindsight, but actually I did. I would have died there. I'm going to pat myself on the back for that one, but here I was able to survive due to the Seekers Arm Guard purchase. So, of course, I don't recommend always selling 2 items, 2 components, and picking it up, but if you have an upcoming Baron fight or an Elder fight, second Baron, something huge coming, you can just pick up a Seeker's Arm Guard and treat it like an expensive stopwatch, because stopwatch was such a key part of Camille's identity for so long now. Even you'd pick it up after 1 or 2 items, where even though you have Ravenous Hydra and Triforce, if you have a stopwatch, it sort of nullifies the fact that you're so squishy, but now of course it's so expensive, so I don't recommend doing that unless it's a really major situation like a base defense, a Baron, or an Elder. So now heading back onto the map, as you can see I picked up my fully completed Zhonya's because I already paid money for the Seeker, so I might as well, and I'm looking to execute a 2-lane siege. I want to be pushing in mid and bot and fully controlling a side of the jungle. Ideally it'd be top, but I'm pretty sure Kiana was initially going bottom, so I was very unsure of the situation, and Kiana's just tilted right now, running around ARAMing, not doing anything, so I felt very uncomfortable to try to fully commit to a side. So now I'm waiting, we get mid lane push, we make people respond. I'm playing a bit too defensive looking back in hindsight, but I really didn't want to be in a situation where we won 3-1 and they just caught out my teammates on mid lane. So here's my biggest mistake of the game, and it still haunts me to this day, where I go top to fix this wave, and initially I was going to push out one more wave and then TP back, but the whole Goon squad was here catching me out top. Luckily I had Zhonya's, and with that item was able to buy a lot of time. So as you can see, even though it's an AP item, I bought so much time with that my team was able to collapse in the situation and punish the enemy team. So it ended up being great. Of course, it wasn't intentional on my part, which is why I hate it. It was a big mistake. But you can see the benefits of Zhonya's, even though it's an AP item, because the stasis is so good on a champion like Camille. So now for the final deploy of the game, I'm coming straight to Elder Dragon that spawns in 1 minute, because even though ideally I want to create pressure, I don't have time to go top and push it all the way in and make Asante respond to me, because if I did, he would come straight to Dragon and have full control, probably get the Elder, and we would lose the game. So I'm here first to help my team get control of the area so that the fight is a lot more so in our favor. So yeah, holding on to my Yen ulti, don't want to be wasting it on Jarvan, of course, trying to hold on to it till the right time, and Nautilus gets a good hook now. So just getting a chunk onto Cassante, and no one has used any major spells, so far so good. And now I'm just kiting out this Rakan spells. I initially assumed he was going to flash W, I thought he was going to play it well, so I tried to buffer my E through his flash W, but he ended up just W flashing for some reason, which was quite unusual, so my buffer didn't quite end up working out. But now I'm just waiting. I'm sitting on the outskirts of this fight, waiting for my spells, firstly, and also waiting for them to use major cooldowns. I'm just playing it slow, playing around my Smolder, waiting for him to be in a better position right now. As you can see, he's around mid-wave, so I'm just kiting in and out, and buffer the Rakan W right there with E, really playing this fight slowly. It can be very tempting, especially for a big Elder fight, to E and ulti on the Israel, but here, of course, my Smolder, 225 stacks, a lot better to play more so for him. So I'm not only just going to ulti the front line and play with my Smolder like that, of course, but I'm going to be playing around his damage and making sure he's able to follow up anything I'm trying to do. So now, boom, as soon as Jarvan goes in, I know they've overcommitted to this fight, and now I'm in a good angle. You can see I approach from the side. I'm not a front-to-back champion, and I was in a situation where I could land a good E, get a good ulti onto Israel, and now, of course, with the counter follow-up, we just completely wiped them. So pretty good team fight. Of course, I would like to... to be honest, I didn't do as much as other champions did. You know, of course, Kiana and Smolder carried the fight. But the way I played the team fight with a lot of discipline, I didn't just ELT the first guy I saw. When Rakan was Wing me, I was constantly looking to buffer that, not letting myself get locked down. So I still played the team fight well. But at this point in the game, of course, a full build Smolder, a lot better to play more so around him. So you really need to be updating the way you play fights throughout the entire game. You can't just be like, I'm always diving on backline no matter what, something like that. It really depends on the champions in your game, the game state, and just basically any more information that you can take in. What spells they have up, what spells they have down. But that's a lot to take in, so I would just say keep in mind that a lot of champions aren't going to be able to follow you up if you go for a max range engage, and holding onto your spells and waiting for a timer where it's a lot more apparent that's going to be good. It's going to give you a lot of value. Next up, we're going to be covering how to counter Camille, some general advice I can give you if you ever have to play up against this champion that can help you shut her down. And the easiest way to do so is to play a champion that beats her not only in lane, but also outscales her in the side lane. So some good examples are champions like Jax, champions like Fiora, champions like Gwen, where it's in your favor to win these matchups, but you also outscale and beat her in the side lane. And the reason that's important is because even if you beat her in lane, with a champion that loses side lane, for example, if you're playing Poppy or a champion like Aatrox, you will get outscaled at some point by Camille, and she can keep you stuck in the side. She'll push the lane in, make you answer, and then she can look to run around and attack your team. But if you win the side lane and you just continue getting stronger and stronger, you can keep her stuck under the bot tier 2, for example, and block her completely from looking to make picks on your teammates, because if she does, you're going to blow open the tower and just get stronger and stronger. Now, we've talked about it a little bit, buffering your Camille E through CC, but if you play against Camille, you can try to do the reverse, where if you time your CC so that you use it on her just as her E hits the wall, you're going to completely nullify her E, and this is really important in a lot of matchups. So for example, if you're playing Jax and you Q onto her head, start beating her down with E, and she tries to E away, you should time your E and activate the second cast for as soon as her E hits the wall and it tries to pull her away, so you can completely cancel her E and keep her stuck. A lot of champions can do this. Renekton, champs like Jayce, any champion with CC can block her from Eing away, so as long as you time it correctly. A vital part for Camille's laning phase is being able to hit your W. This is a spell that is very good, very useful for 100 to 0 trades. If you play against Camille, the way to play against her W in a lot of situations is not actually to try to walk backwards if she Ws, but to try to close the gap forwards. So for example, if you're playing a champ with a gap closer, it's very easy. If she tries to W you, instead of Eing away on Renekton or Qing away on Fiora, you should go towards her, because while she's stuck in her W animation, she cannot hit you, she can't Q onto you or auto attack you, so she can't get her passive, so it's free reign to trade onto her. And you don't need to be playing a champion with a gap closer. If you're playing a champ like GP, for example, can abuse your passive auto attack on a minion. Just before you feel like Camille's going to W you, you can normally tell by their body language, hit the minion and run towards her, or even champ like Gnar, you can abuse your fleet proc to run towards her, close that gap, and really start to just tank the inner damage of the W, which does almost nothing, and then you're able to retrade onto her while she's stuck in that W animation. Another tip is because Camille's generally run TP and Ignite together, they don't have flash, it's very reliable to set up ganks against this champion, because so many champions have a lot stronger push than her. You can crash waves and let them bounce back towards you, so instead of just constantly pushing, keeping her stuck under the tower, trying to poke her down, try to allow the wave to come back towards you, try to freeze it outside your tower, and use your jungle to shut her down, try to call for ganks, especially if you're playing a champion with any type of CC, because if you are confident in your ability to time your crowd control to cancel her E, there's basically no way she can survive a gank. So let's say, for example, you're playing Renekton or Set, and she tries to E away, time your stun as soon as her E hits the wall, you can pull her back, and it's very hard for her to survive the gank. But even without that, if you can freeze and play for a gank, with the new terrain, it's so hard for her to get away. She has to run a half marathon before she's in range to E away, so ganks are going to be reliable regardless. In terms of good champs to pick into her, you don't always have to play a champ that can win lane and side lane. They might not be your champion pool. There are a couple more options you can take, where Eclipse is a really good item into Camille. So if you can play a strong Eclipse user, so a champion like Riven, Eclipse is very good because Camille wants to be taking short trades, weaving in and out. But if you have Eclipse, she's basically weaving in and out and allowing for your Eclipse to come back off cooldown. So she really struggles into champions that use this item very well, or if you don't even play those champs, you can just play tanks, but make sure you play strong disengage tanks. Don't play a tank like Cho'Gath or a champ like Ornn, play a champion like Poppy or a champ like Gragas, where you have a lot of disengage to block her from Eing onto your team or from Eing away, and make it really hard for her to do her job in the game. As usual, we're going to be finishing off the video with the main takeaways, the most important concepts I want you to keep in your mind as you head into that next Camille game. Now, the first one is, of course, taking short trades. Playing around your cooldowns, weaving in and out, playing around that passive cooldown, maybe your E cooldown, it really depends on the situation. But Camille as a champion, you really want to be weaving in and out and playing around spells, not just in laning phase. We want to be taking short trades, disengaging, looking to do so again when your spells are up, but also in team fights and skirmishing. You want to be maybe queuing a minion, Eing forward, hitting somebody, and kiting back, and just doing that again and again, weaving back and forth more like a boxer than a champion like Olaf, where you want to be more of a steamroller. The next takeaway is getting to that Triforce without falling behind. Your base level, your goal for every game, at a bare minimum, to be reaching Triforce without being behind your opponent. You shouldn't be down a level, you shouldn't be 0-2, anything like that, because the worst thing that could happen is you come back to lane with that nice Triforce spike, and you're up against somebody that has Eclipse and tier 2 boots, or just a big advantage over you, You can't really abuse that spike. So making sure you keep that as your base level, and then working on punishing your opponent, getting fed, getting ahead, dominating your lane, because it doesn't matter if you win your lane half the time and the other half you get shit on, because you really need to be able to get that Triforce consistently. The main takeaway for the mid game is, of course, finding your balance. The balance between side laning and playing for looking for picks, looking to attack the enemy team. Because if you fully commit to one or the other and make that your habit, the thing you do every game, you're not going to get very far. You really need to hit that middle ground, that you're taking in the information, you're being very aware of what's happening, the game state, or the champions, and then making a decision. Because your champion has so many options, so you need to take in that information. It's not like you're playing a champion like Trundle, where it doesn't really matter what's going on mid. You're going to run straight down side and beat some heads in. Bill is a champion with a lot of options, which means you need to take more information into account. And the next takeaway kind of bleeds into that. You need to be watching mid lane like a hawk. You need to be really studying what's happening, seeing if the enemy bot plays aggressive, maybe the Israel sits back and queues from max range, or maybe he's eating forward, looking to really push his lead. That information, those little bit of positioning errors they make, the body language is really going to help you influence your decision. When you play this champion, it's a lot more important to be very aware and study what's happening mid lane than it might be on a champion like Jax or Yorick, or even a champion like Vlad. It doesn't matter as much, because even if they're playing aggressive, you're not going to really run them down as Vlad on mid lane unless they're really out of position. So on Camille, that information is very vital, and it is going to help you in the long run on a lot of different champs, don't get me wrong. That information is never useless, but on Camille, it's just a lot more important. And the last takeaway is just going to be to remember, even though your champion has some of the longest range engaged in the game and lockdown, your teammates most likely do not. Unless you've got a great team comp, maybe you have Kai'Sa, Zac jungle, Yone mid champs like that, they can follow you into battle, but a lot of situations you play Camille, that's not going to be the case. You might have a Graves jungle, you might have a Talon mid, you need to give them time to catch up to you. The amount of range you have to get onto the enemy backline is going to be significantly higher than a lot of the other champions in the game that you play with. You need to take that into account. You need to give them time to catch up to you before you go in, and that ties into being aware of your teammates. Your awareness of your team going to be very important when playing Camille, because you need to know, if I ult this guy, am I going to get a full Ziggs combo to follow me up? Is my Xayah going to be able to hit? It really depends on the champions you have, what range you can go in, where the enemy team is standing, but being very aware of your teammate is going to help you regardless in any game you play. Alright everyone, I'm going to wrap it up there, and thank you again for your patience with this guide. I know it did take me a while. I really wanted to put a ton of extra time into it to make it my best guide yet. So I hope you enjoyed, I hope you learned a lot, and as usual, if you have any questions, feel free to ask me down below, and I'd hope not after 3 hours of this guide, but if you do, feel free, and other than that, I'll see you guys next time.